you have big shoes to fill. The giants came before you. They've written down the blueprint. They've handed it to you. It's up to you to pick it up, to soak it in, to read it, to cultivate it, to perfect it, to master it.
This episode of Choices Not Chances podcast is sponsored by Louisiana Gun Shop, located on Highway 90 West in Broussard, Louisiana, just south of Lafayette. For more information, stay tuned at the end of this episode. This is Choices Not Chances podcast with Ryan and Matt. I'm your co-host, Matthew Charette. Sitting next to me is Ryan Rogers. Ryan.
Hey guys, welcome back to Choices Not Chances. We're glad you're here with us, and just like every other podcast, every other episode, if you see something that needs to be shared, share it out to the village. Right? Get the information out there, and don't be selfish with it. Today we have Justin Cramer of former Action Guy podcast, former Action Guy News, J. Cramer Graphics. He is a former Marine. Well, he's still a Marine, but he's former active duty Marine Staff Sergeant when he got out with a litany of different deployments, both Iraq and Afghanistan, both ground side like 3-6 and then advisory side towards the end. And we're going to talk a bit about that today. We've been trying to put this together, and we've even admittedly already recorded an episode, and we had some flawed audio or corrupted audio. So this is going to be take two, and I hope you guys enjoy the show. Justin Cramer, thanks for coming out, man.
Hey, what's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
really
man.
Appreciate it.
Stoked to take number 2 and see if our technology can hang.
It's been a little bit since we did it, so I don't even remember what all we talked about. So it's almost like doing a fresh one for me.
Yeah, I think it should be like a freshie. I think it'd be good.
Should be all good.
Yeah, man. So we talked offline a little bit, but I'm going to ask a couple of pointed questions, and then we can just get after it and go where it goes. First question, where do you come from? Who do you come from? And a little bit about your childhood.
Where do I come from? I'm from Indiana originally. I was born in Kokomo, but I claim Lafayette, Indiana as my home. My dad was in the Army. His dad was in the Army Air Corps and then in the Air Force. And then on my mom's side, her dad was in the Army. And then I have a smattering of uncles that served in the military as well. Most of them from Indiana, Ohio area. When I was young, we moved to Tennessee. So I spent a lot of my childhood in Chattanooga, Tennessee. My dad went from active Army to reserves, and he worked at the Reserve Center there and deployed to Desert Storm with the 377th Combat Support Hospital. And I remember all that as a kid and stuff. And, that was kind of obviously impactful for me. And probably, I would definitely say it's probably one of the reasons I decided to join the military.
Yeah, right on. And what about childhood? Were you in team sports and such as a young kid?
Oh, yeah. So childhood stuff, man, I played baseball and football, like starting at 5. My dad was really into it. He's still into it. He's a umpire. He's retired now from the government, but now he does umpiring for football and softball. So at 5 and 6 years old is when I first started playing both football and baseball. Played those all the way up until high school. I was in the Boy Scouts also, which I know gets a bad rap today, but I was in the Boy Scouts in Tennessee. So we were like whitewater canoeing, going shooting bows, like, legit. It was a good time. Right before I started high school, I moved back to Indiana, moved to Lafayette, Indiana. Went to high school there. Literally, it was like a month before high school started. So it was like the worst time you could move. So I moved, didn't know anyone and stuff like that. Went to McCutcheon High School, and then September 11th happened, and I'd always said I was going to join the military. For a long time, I was going to join the Army. I planned on joining the Army because that's what my dad was in. And then some point in high school, I read Marine Sniper. And I was like, oh, well, fuck, that's it.
Got him.
That's it. That sounds way cooler. It was like, I don't know why. I don't know what it was, but I read that book like 5 times probably. Maybe more. And so when I was a senior, September 11th happened, and me and my buddies went down to the recruiter that week and planned on joining right after I finished, but I turned 18 as a senior. I'm like one of those weird dates where I'm a little bit older. So I was a senior. So right after I turned 18, I got arrested as a senior. for weed.
Oh.
And yeah. And so that delayed me, and I felt like shit because my buddy I got to sign up, deployed, Michael Hanthorne, who's been on my show a couple times, and he was getting ready to go to boot camp and stuff, and I felt bad because I'm the one that convinced him to join. So we had a going away party for him to go to when he was going to boot camp, and we got arrested again. He got away. He ran and got away and went to boot camp the next day. I got arrested again, and the end story is I didn't join until 2006. So I'm one of those guys that the recruiter probably hates, like this motherfucker, you know.
Oh,
so,
for sure.
So it took a little bit, and I honestly probably wouldn't have even been able to join had there not been waivers.
Oh,
you know, because there had been a war going on because of all the waivers.
Yeah. It was funny how the waiver process worked too. Like in the beginning, getting a waiver was easy, man. You could get a waiver for anything as long as it wasn't like a tattoo on your hands or your face. Drugs, waiver. Felonies, waiver.
Yeah, and it was just cannabis too. It wasn't like any hard drugs, and it wasn't like I was distributing or anything like that. It was in Indiana, they have a law called maintaining a common nuisance. So if you get arrested, if something's found in your house, then everyone in the house automatically it's considered a Class D felony.
Wow.
And it's called maintaining a common nuisance, meaning that you maintained a place where crimes could occur, I guess. So some perspective here too, when I turned 18, I moved out of my house, my mom's house. I moved out before I even graduated high school. So I was like living on my own a couple months before I even graduated high school because I was already 18 and I had a couple buddies that were like 20, 21, and they were like, hey, we're moving, we're getting a place. You want to move in with us? And I'm like, dude, I'm still in high school. Like I can't move out. And then me and my mom got into it about something about me like staying out late with my friends or something. And she's like, well, if you want to go party, you know, go move out. And I'm like, okay, like I just got an offer. Man. But it wasn't anything bad. Her and I were good, obviously.
So then you had this issue. It delays you, and then 06 you joined. Now, what was
very frustrating?
Why 06? Because what year was it when you got delayed?
That was as soon as I could join. So the first time, like I said, I went to the recruiter in 2001, and then I got arrested. So that was in September. I went to the recruiter, and then I turned 18 in December, and then in January I got arrested. So within like a few months of September 11th, I got arrested. Within like 2 months of talking to the recruiter, I got arrested. Was getting everything fixed. This is a kind of a funny story. We'll bring a little bit full circle. Was getting everything taken care of. Got arrested again. I was literally at the very end of my probation, like my last drug and alcohol class I had to take, and I got arrested again. And I'm like, God damn it, you know. And so this is my second time. And I have to go talk to the prosecutor, and I don't know anything about anything. So I go to his office to meet with him at whatever day and time they told us. And this is, you know, for people that don't realize, this is like 2002, 2003 time frame. Cell phones were out, but there was not internet on cell phones. And if you had a cell phone, not everybody had them. I think I definitely had one by this time, but it definitely didn't have internet. So like I would normally do, I was carrying a book to read. That's what you would do when you waited. You had magazines and books and stuff. We didn't have cell phones to flip through. And I was reading Marine Sniper at the prosecutor's office. And when he came in, he was like, oh, that's a good book. I really enjoy that one. I was like, yeah, me too. I'm hoping when all this is done, I can join. I'm trying to join the Marines. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, have your recruiter call me. And if that's true, then I'll see if I can do something. So instead of like throwing the book at me for being arrested my second time, he gave me like 6 months of unsupervised probation because my recruiter verified like, hey, this guy's going to join. Yeah. So had to go through all that stuff again. I think I had to take more classes, did my probation, and then went down to MEPS again. And once I got everything done, I got down to MEPS again. I had to go see the wizard because I'd been arrested twice. They were like, you have to go talk to the fucking psych, make sure everything's good to go. And that guy denied my entry for a year. Oh. He wrote that I seem like a stable person and this and that, but he wants to see if I can stay out of, excuse me, I've been sick. He wants to see if I can stay out of trouble and maintain a job for a year, which I've had a job since I was 14. So that was not an issue. And dude, I was devastated.
I bet.
My recruiter was obviously devastated. He lost his number for that month, but I was like, this is fucking, I mean, cause this is all I ever wanted to do. And I was that guy. I was telling people, yeah, I'm going to join the Marines, man. I'm going to join the Marines. Started telling people in 2001, right after September 11th. Imagine that. And then after a while, I just stopped telling people. I stopped saying it.
Yeah.
And I didn't, for a little bit, I didn't think it was going to, sorry, guys, I've been sick. For a little bit, I didn't think it was going to happen. But I was like, you know what? I was having dreams. I started having, my buddy who I got to join at this point is now in Fallujah, you know, picking up dead bodies. You know, if anybody's listened to my podcast, the episode with Michael Hamthorne, he was a motor T guy, got sent over and got put on mortuary affairs and cleaned up, him and his team cleaned up like 600 dead insurgents, you know, during Fallujah. That was their role in the battle. And I'm like, you know, so I feel like a piece, I don't know all of that yet, but I feel like a piece of shit because my buddy is now over in Iraq and I'm over here partying at Purdue because I live right by Purdue University. So I'm like, man, you know, like I'm a real scumbag. And I was like, you know what? Like I said, I was having dreams about it. It was all messed up. And I was like, all right, I'm going to try one more time. And if it doesn't work out, then it wasn't meant to be. And, you know, it worked out. So
What was that feeling like when you finally got the nod? Like, yep, you're shipping. You're good.
Dude, it was nothing worked out right the whole way. So
Here we go.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to try it one more time. And I called the recruiter and I was like, hey, what's up, man? My name's Justin Cramer. I'm wanting to join. They're like, okay, like when do you want to join? I'm like, as soon as possible. They're like, come on down. What do you want to do? I'm like, infantry. And they're like, all right, cool. So they're like, come down tomorrow or maybe it was whatever day. we'll sit down with you. And I was like, all right, cool. Go down there. And they're like, dude, we still have your original birth certificate and your high school diploma and all this. Because last time when they brought me back from MEPS, I just got out of the car, got in my car, and left. And didn't talk to them after that. They still had all my documents. I didn't even realize. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. He's like, all right, so what's going on? You want to leave? And I'm like, yeah, let's do this, man. Like, I've been trying for years. Let's get it done. And they're like, here's the deal with infantry. We're having a tough time getting those spots. Everybody wants to do infantry. And I was like, all right. And they're like, well, what else would you want to do? And I think I said like tanker, forward observer, something else. I don't remember. And they're like, all right, well, we'll check on those, but we're focusing on the infantry. And I'm like, all right, cool. And it's like weeks are going by, you know, they set up my MEPS interview and all that stuff. And I'm like, hey, what's up with the job? Like, what's up with the, you know, did you guys get the infantry contract? Da, 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 da. And it's like all the way up until a couple days before I'm supposed to go to boot camp. And they haven't told me that infantry was guaranteed yet. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I call down there and I'm like, hey, what's up with this infantry job? And the recruiter answered, wasn't my recruiter. And he's like, nah, man, you're good to go, bro. Just be down here on Friday or whatever day it was. Be down here. You're set. And I was like, all right, cool. And so I go down, go to the recruiter's office, go down to MEPS, and they're like, one, they interrogate the shit out of me. I had to lie a lot. I had the head guys, like a gunny and like it was like two gunnies or a gunny and a master sergeant. They put me in a room and they're like, all right, the first time you got arrested or the first time you tried to sign up, you said you had smoked weed 15 times or 20 times, something like that. I was like, okay. And he's like, the second time you tried to sign up, you said you smoked weed 3 times. Which one is it? Or are you lying? And I was like, I'm just sitting there with this gunny and this master sergeant right here. Because they're trying to grill me. Because they're like, this dude's been down here multiple times. If he makes it to boot camp, is he going to make it through it? You know, kind of deal. So I get it. And I got them both like, what is it? What's the truth? And I was like, hey, gunny, I was told to tell you the first time I thought it was how many hits I had taken. I've only smoked 3 times, but I took 20 hits. And he's like, you expect me to believe that? And I'm like, yeah, that's the truth. And he's like, all right, I'm going to sign off on the waiver. And I'm like, whoo, couldn't believe I made it out of that one.
Both of them walked in the break room and they're like, nah.
You got to be fast on your feet, man.
That's funny.
So I get there and they're like, all right, so what job do you want to do? And I'm like, what do you mean? What job do I want to do? I'm doing infantry. And they're like, no. They're like, yeah, I mean, they're like, you can do infantry, but you're going to be leaving in about 3 months. And I'm like, what? And at this time, because I'm like, oh, I'm actually leaving now. Yeah. This is for real. I had quit my job, moved out of my apartment, sold my car, and I had just found out my girlfriend at the time was pregnant.
Oh,
like
right
3
on.
months pregnant.
Sweet.
And so when he said that, I was like, dude, there's I can't wait 3 more months. Like I got all this other shit just happened. And he's like, well, you can leave today, but you gotta pick one of these other jobs. It's like supply, admin, this and that. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to do any of those. And he's like, well, you can do open contract. And I was like, I don't want to be open contract because I'll become a fucking mechanic. Or I said, I'll become a cook or a fucking mechanic. And that's exactly what I told him. And he's like, no, I still pull infantry from there. Whatever. Went open contract, made a mistake, which was because they changed my contract. I didn't get to leave that day. So I went back home again for another week. And so I had to go back and tell everybody again, yeah, I'm not leaving today. So it was like the worst. So anyways, I finally leave, go to boot camp, get to the end of boot camp. They're like, hey, all the open contract people come over here. Cramer, you go in the room and they're going to tell you what your job is. Go in the room and it's some geographic intelligence specialist, like map maker or some shit. And I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. It's not infantry, but I mean, at least it's like
it's not a cook.
Clearance job. Yeah, I'll get a security clearance out of it. Maybe something cool will happen. Get back home, get online, start looking up like, oh, I'm going to go to school here. This is what's going to happen after MCT, Go to MCT and Marine Combat Training. And at the end of that, they tell everybody, here's your MOS. Here's where your MOS school is. If it's local, go get on that bus. If it's not, go over here and they're going to set up your travel arrangements, whatever. And they read me and a couple other dudes' names off. And they're like, Cramer, so-and-so, you're going to 2nd Maintenance Battalion, you're 3521, Motor T. And I'm like, what the fuck is 3521? And they're like, mechanic. And I'm like, oh, fuck.
A mechanic or a cook.
Super upset about that. And I'm like, man. So then I get to MOS school. And I'm like, well, maybe. I'm trying to make the best of it. I'm like, maybe I'll get sent to a cool unit and I'll still get to do cool stuff because I'm still in the Marines. And I get done with MOS school and they're like, Cramer, so-and-so, you're going to 2nd Maintenance Battalion, 2nd MLG. And then the staff sergeant laughed. He's like, that's the worst unit in the entire Marine Corps. And I was like, fuck. I was just pissed, man. Every step of the way. Just getting kicked in the face every step of the way. I was like, man.
Yeah.
This isn't what I was supposed to be.
It's not what I dreamed about.
Yeah, so I went to Maintenance Battalion, miserable. It's a shitty place to be. It's not, it's like you don't even get a weapon. When you go to the rifle range, you go check a weapon out. And then when you're done, you come check it back in. You never see that weapon again. You know what I'm saying? Like you're coming in at 05 to PT, and then you're back in coveralls at 0730 or whatever. And then you're in coveralls and grease all day long. It's like a factory job. My ex used to bitch about how I was the last person home every day. We lived in base housing. So you can see when everyone's coming home, I'm always the last dude pulling in. I'm like, hey, man, that's just the nature of the job,
Nature of the job, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, especially at a time where vehicles are getting blown to pieces. I'm sure you guys not deal with all that?
It was in the rear. Is that not in the States. No, we would mostly do stuff for training. When units are going out and blowing motors out in training areas and stuff, they bring them back to us and we'd work on them. Anything that like, like if 3.6, their motor pool couldn't handle it, if it's above their echelon, then it came to us.
Gotcha.
So.
Damn grunts. Tearing shit up.
Dude, the worst part about it was everybody. The worst part about being a mechanic is you don't get to drive the vehicles. Like I'm just fixing everybody else's mistakes. I don't get to go out and do off-roading and go make cool mistakes or anything like that. I'm just here fixing everybody else's stuff. And it's like and then we would be swapping motors. We'd be swapping motors out of Humvees and stuff, and you'd get a rebuilt motor from the civilian contractors or the Marines that work civilian contractors. Put that motor in the Humvee and go to fire it up, and it would be no good. So then you got to take the motor out again, and it's like shit like that, man.
All day.
I did it so much I could have a motor on the ground, a Humvee motor on the ground before lunch. Like if I came into work and they're like that Humvee has to have the motor out of it before lunch, we'd be like, all right, cool. 2 of us would go in and just start pulling everything off.
Damn, dude.
It was miserable.
That's the life of a mechanic.
It was miserable.
Miserable. The best thing that happened.
I might know something about that.
The best thing that happened was that I got pulled. They didn't like me because I was like 22, 23 or whatever when I got to the fleet. So I wasn't like an idiot kid, and I was married. I got married on boot leave because I'm that guy. Like I said, my ex was pregnant. And they were like, hey, are you going to move into base housing or are you going to live out in town? What are you going to do? And I'm like, I guess base housing, and it seems like the logical thing. And they're like, all right, cool. Well, go sign up, and when you sign up, when you get a house, let us know, and we'll give you time off so that your family, you can move your family in and all that stuff. And I was like, all right, cool, good to go. Go sign up. They call me the next day. They're like, hey, your house is ready.
Oh,
we got a
wow.
house for you. I was like, oh, sick. Yeah, I was over in Tarawa Terrace.
Okay.
I was like, all right, cool. So I let my platoon sergeant know, like, hey, sergeant, they said the house is ready. They're like, all right, go ahead and put in a leave request so you can go home and get your family and bring them down. I'm like, all right, cool. Put in a leave request, denied. I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, you don't rate leave. It's only for PCS to get 10 days of house hunting leave or whatever. And I was like, all right, well, can I take my or PTAD?
Yeah.
I was like, can I just take my normal leave to go home and get my stuff? And they're like, well, go ahead and put in the request, denied. Hey, Devil Dog, you just got to the fleet. You have like 2 days of leave on the books. You can't go 10 in the hole to go get your family. And I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of fucked up. And one of my corporals is like, that's fucked up, man. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I was like, because I signed for the house because they told me to. Now I'm no longer getting BAH. And my wife at the time, is back home in Indiana, and I can't send her any money because I'm no longer getting the BAH. So, like, and he's like, man, I'd request mass if that was me. And I'm like, whoa, like, I'm not trying to rock any boats. This is my first, like, week here, literally. And something happens, and later that day, the platoon sergeants are like, hey, Cramer, come up to the office. I go up to the office. There's like 3 sergeants in there, and they're like, so we hear you're going to request mass. And I'm like,
oh, Lord.
I never said that. That was not me. Like, I was like, look, I'm just trying to, and I explained, I'm like, you told me to get a house. I got a house. You told me when I got a house, I could go home. Now you're telling me I can't go home. And the money's getting taken out. Anyways, we're going back and forth. My ex her dad eventually is like, dude, fuck it. We'll just move her down there for you. It's not a big deal. So whatever. Get moved down. I tell my platoon sergeant, like, hey, they're going to be here tomorrow. And he's like, all right, cool. When they get here, let me know. And you can have the rest of the day off and the following day so you can get all your shit settled in. I'm like, all right, good to go. They show up. It's after work. I tell my corporal, I'm like, hey, corporal, my family's here. Sergeant so-and-so told me, whatever. He's like, all right, good to go. And fucking go move my family in. Don't come into work the next day because he told me I didn't have to. Get a phone call at 06. Cramer, where the fuck are you at? I'm at home, Sergeant. He's like, why the fuck are you there? I'm like, you told me that when my family got here, I could move them in and then take the day off. And he's like, you were supposed to let me know. I was like, I let Corporal so-and-so know, Sergeant. And he's like, well, why aren't you here? And I'm like, I feel like we covered this. You just told me. And he's like, all right, good to go. Take the rest of the day off. Get your family moved in. Let them know you're going to 29 Palms for 6 months and 2 weeks. Stoosh, hangs up the phone.
Oh, man.
What the fuck? I mean, we're still laying on the floor. We haven't even built the bed yet. We're still on. I roll over and I'm like, hey, I'm going to California in 2 weeks for 6 months. And then she gets all upset and like 5 minutes later calls back. He's like, you're not going to 29 Palms anymore. Be here tomorrow, 06, green on green. Hangs up the phone again. I'm like, what the fuck, man? Like, this is crazy. This is my wife's first like taste of the military. Yeah. And I'm like, I know, what can I say? So I was not their favorite. I got tasked with, they didn't know what it was. They're like, hey, you're going to go work on this EFSS program. I'm like, what's that? They're like, we don't know. Just go. I'm like, all right, good to go. And it was a TAD project where I got attached to 10th Marines and I worked on the Jeep, or I call it a Jeep, the little vehicle, expeditionary fire support system vehicle and the 120 millimeter mortar. And it was the best thing that could have happened to me, honestly, because I got to work on it twice as it was going through testing. So I got to go to Alaska. I got to go to Bridgeport. I got to go to Bridgeport, not do all the hiking that everyone else had to do. We were driving up and down the hills, so I could see all the views without the misery.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like, man, this is what I thought the Marine Corps was going to be like. It was in the field. All these guys were TAD from like 8th Marines and other units, and they were all guys that were like getting ready to EAS the next 6 months. So when we would go to like the range and go shoot a 50 cal, they're like, the machine gunners have shot probably millions of rounds. These guys have been to Iraq twice, like early Iraq, and I'm like, I've never shot a machine gun other than MCT.
All the rounds.
Yeah, and they're like, Cramer, get up here, and they're just fucking handing me cans of ammo. Just let me I'm shooting the mortar. I'm like, this is what I wanted. And then I got sent back to maintenance battalion. Back to misery.
Back to misery. Yeah, and so who were you with then?
When I was with maintenance battalion?
No, I mean, did you detach from them and go out to this whatever this was?
Yeah. Okay, so I was TAD to, I think they created a battery, Fox 210 is the battery.
Okay.
There was a Fox 210 normal shooting battery after that, but I think at the time they created it for the testing. I could be wrong about that. One of the RD guys out there will correct me, but it was just a battery that they created because they created a battery and they created an infantry company. I was working on both sides. There was two separate kinds of vehicles, but I'd go out with the grunts one day and out with the RD guys one day, usually with the grunts more because they drove more. But I would go out and shoot, like I said, we'd go out and shoot the 120 millimeter mortars and stuff one day. And then I'd be out driving, doing, movement to contact and stuff in vehicles, different maneuvers and stuff like that. The next, it was a good time, man. It was great.
Yeah, that's great. And then it probably just a real buzzkill getting sent back home, huh? Like after.
Yeah, I mean, the first time definitely I got back and I'm like, man, fucking everybody here's miserable. No one's happy. Nobody wants to be here. It's just it was just a negative environment. And then I remember I was driving through base one day and I saw the vehicle drive by and I'm like, no way, they're back. I'm like, oh shit, like maybe I'm going to be able to do this again. And I'm like, I go into work and I remember talking to one of the sergeants like, hey, at this time I'm a little bit more senior. They knew I came back from some projects and people rotated out. So there wasn't that distaste like there was before. And I was like, hey, are these vehicles back in, what's going on with that? And someone was like, yeah, I think so. But you're not going on it. The so-and-so is. And I'm like, what? And this guy, like, he doesn't even want to go. Like, he's like talking about like, fuck this. They're going to Alaska. I don't want to do that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then this sergeant was like, look, man, I know the guy running the program and you don't want to work for him. I'm like, no, you don't, dude. I literally know the majors. Like, we hung out. It was weird how well Lance Corporal Cramer and the majors and stuff were hanging out.
Well, you were a little bit older.
Yeah.
You weren't.
I was.
You were
like,
an older boot when you came in. So when you're 24, you're probably a lot closer to what the majors thinking is than your own peers.
And it was mostly like, it was a small group of people. And I was like one of their like trusty mechanics, so, and I was okay with giving people shit, like when the major would give me shit about a vehicle being broken down, I'd throw a little bit of shade back to him, respectfully so. And it was just, I don't know, it was a good environment. So anyways, they were like, no, Corporal so-and-so's going, you're not going on this. And I'm like, dude, fuck this. I'm like, that doesn't work for me. So one day at lunchtime, I'm like, I'm just going to go drive around and find them. So I drove around until I found the motor pool that had all the vehicles in it. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I park, start walking up. I'm kind of looking to see if I see anyone. And Major Swope, who was the major of the program at the time, walks out. He's like, Cramer! And I was like, sir, what's up? He's like, you want to come back and work on these? I'm like, fuck yeah. He's like, I'll do a by name request to get you back. And I was like, all right, cool. And so that's something I tell people. I tell that story, and I know it's a long-winded story, but you have to shape your own destiny.
You do.
You know what I'm saying? These idiots that were in charge of me are like, no, you can't do it. We know who's running it, and you don't want to work for them, blah, blah, blah. Like, dude, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and shape my own destiny. And if I just accepted that and gone back to work, who knows how things could have been different. So
yeah, I heard all the way growing up, like, nobody cares about your career but you. If you want something, you better go get something. If you want to be heard, you better go get heard. And there were times in my career that, that worked out real great for me. And there were times in my career where being heard didn't work out as well. But I always applied myself to what I wanted and where I wanted to be as well. And like, if you don't, you're just going to get pushed wherever somebody else wants you. And that's never good. So
yeah.
So
it helped by having good work ethic and being a good worker that they recognized the first time that they did the testing. So when I came back and was like, I want to come back, they're like, fuck yes, we know you're reliable. We don't want some rando
that we got to train all over again and everything else. Yeah.
I already know the vehicle. I was helping fabricate. It was all new stuff. We were literally fabricating stuff and then spraying caulk paint on it. I was like, man, I'm probably gonna get cancer from out here fucking painting stuff. Like,
oh man. Well, okay. So how long did you go back and spend with them then?
I think I did a total of like 8 or 9 months between the two different training things. And that's not just like traveling around. That was like at Camp. We were based out of Camp Lejeune. Spent a lot of time there in the field, doing field ops, just driving. I mean, I put thousands of miles. A lot of people hated those vehicles when they got to the fleet. And I even told them, like, this is not like marine proof. Like it needs to be able to just jump in, turn it on, and drive it. This thing's got air ride suspension that's got different levels you can set it at. It's got rear steer in the back, so dudes are fucking with that, and it's wobbling. Like there's all this stuff that's super cool, but it's like
not grunt proof.
It's not bulletproof.
And you're talking like they were paying 150. I think it was either 150 or $250,000 per vehicle.
Yeah,
and I'm like, this is crazy. The UTVs that they use now are, probably better suited, but
I just seen some of these light armor or no armor light skinned vehicles that the Army's using, like their squad. They call them something. It's like the squad vehicle, right?
Yeah, they're based on the Colorado. The Colorado truck, I think.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's something I've never seen before, and it's dope. Like you're gonna get there fast, but man, I started talking to those guys. I'm like, what's the ID to feed on this? Like I'm just saying.
Well, that was the deal with those little vehicles as well. People were like, oh, and rightfully so. This was 2008, 2007 timeframe that we were testing it, and IEDs were obviously a huge deal in Iraq and stuff. But it was like you're missing the purpose of the vehicle. The vehicle is supposed to go in where you're going to be on foot, and this is just giving you wheels in areas you might not necessarily get it, and give you indirect fire support. So when you look at, there was like a whole package deal. When the Osprey came online, they needed a lightweight howitzer. So that was the howitzer, right? They switched from the 1908 to the 777. Now the Osprey can pick that up. This vehicle was designed to fit in the back of an Osprey or 53, the vehicle and the mortar system. So the whole deal was like, if you're out on a MEU and some shit goes popping off in Israel or some shit like that, and you got to fly in some fucking birds.
Let's just pretend hypothetically. Let's
just pretend here scenario. Israel and Hamas are fighting. You got to fly in. You got to fly in.
Funny as that's
now you have heavy machine guns because it can mount a 50 cal, Mark 19, whatever.
Yep.
You have indirect fire support because now you can bring in a 120 millimeter mortar, and you have mobility because now you're on a vehicle that has the ability to go off-roading. It had, like I said, multi-level like airbag suspension you can adjust. It had the the air system in the tire, so even if it gets a hole, it keeps it pumped up. I can't remember what it's called.
Run flat,
yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called. It's
probably something better than that, but
yeah, there's some acronym for it, obviously.
Oh, if it's the Marine Corps, we got an acronym.
We don't need to bring that into this.
Yeah, so
you know where they get those? They come from the RAG.
What's that?
That's the random acronym generator.
Oh yeah.
Did it generate its own acronym?
Yeah.
I was like, the RAG.
No, I'm just kidding.
That's what they call the training squadron for the pilots. I was like, why would they get it from there? Anyways, but yeah, dude, good time, man. Got to go to Alaska. Got to see the Northern Lights. Got to do all that.
Now, see, that's on my bucket list, man. What's that like in person?
It's unexplainable, man.
Is it like a magical experience?
I mean, literally, it was like dude, these dudes I was with were wild, right? First off, these infantry guys I was with were wild. Again, they were all at the end of their tour. They were with like 8th Marines and did 2 deployments to Iraq where they got blown up a bunch. They were in like Ramadi and stuff. And these dudes were just crazy. So they take us to Alaska, to this place called the Bolio Lake Cold Regions Test Center. And it's by it's up in the interior near Fairbanks. And this place is in the middle of nowhere. It's like you go off this road, this main road, which is like a 2-lane highway in the middle of nowhere in Alaska. And you drive on this kind of like a trail out to the Bolio Lake Training Center, and it's like a big ass building built near a lake, and it has these chain link fence around it. It has a barbed wire fence all around it. And they're like, hey, this is where you guys are going to be staying. Welcome to Alaska, blah, 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 blah. The staff NCO and officers got a hotel in town or some shit like that. All of us dirty and, E6 and below or whatever, staying here. And
all you peasants.
The first night, and we're like locked in too. This is like a barbed wire fence. You have to have a pass. They're like, tomorrow we'll get you guys a pass so you can come and go, because we're still waiting on the vehicles and stuff to get there. And one of the guys was like, fuck this. Threw his ISO mat over the fence, climbed over, called a pizza place that was like 30 minutes away, was like, I'm going to order a pizza. I'm really just wanting you to come pick me up. I'll give you the cash. Got this pizza guy to come pick him up, left, and was like going to house parties and shit. We saw him like the next day or the day after. It was like, what the fuck? This happened to him twice. It happened in Alaska, and it happened while we were in
it happened
Bridgeport
to him
as well. Yeah, he was like, fuck it, I'm out.
He
like, you guys
made it
following
happen.
rules. We're staying in camp? No. Like, no. We're here by ourselves? Who's going to stop us? You know, we're literally in nowhere, middle of nowhere, Alaska. So, anyways, so what happened, the mortars, when they were driving them up, still had their firing pins on them. And I think the bill of lading on the trucks were incorrect. The serial numbers didn't match. So they got hung up at the border for like a week or something. It took a little bit. And we had nothing to do. So like one of our lieutenant got like a hunting license and borrowed a rifle from one of the Army contractors that worked there and was hunting. We got kits from the MWR. We were ice fishing. We were out there like digging big ass boring holes in this like 5 foot of ice and out ice fishing, hiking. Awesome. Dude, it was awesome. It was like, woo, we're out here just having a good time, you know? And then we went to a bar. But we can never see the northern lights because we were in the middle of nowhere, but the compound we were in had huge floodlights everywhere. So it was just, you know, you couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
And they let us have a couple days to go up to Fairbanks. So we went up to Fairbanks and we were getting ready to go into a bar. And someone's like, oh, the northern lights. And I'm like, what? And you can tell we're all tourists. We're all like, whoa. Or like probably 10 or 15 minutes just standing outside the bar like, this is crazy. Because it's just this like wave of color. And as it's swinging back and forth, it's just like changing colors. And I mean, it's hard
what
to
is it? What causes that?
It's from the sun. It's like the solar flares off the sun hitting the atmosphere, burning up in the atmosphere.
That's wild. I want to see it.
It's definitely awesome. I mean, Alaska overall was a good time. You know, there was a huge bar fight. There was like, I don't know. We had a good time. We ate at the end, all the fish we caught, the rabbits that the lieutenant killed. We had a huge cookout at the end. They brought in a bunch of, like, the locals brought in some moose meat. We had moose burgers.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, it was a really cool time. So, and then I got back to my unit, and then
back to misery.
Back to misery. After that, it was like quickly got put onto a deployment, and then did the workup for that, which was nothing. I mean, for me, for a mechanic, it was like going to advanced schools. At the time, I went to what was it? It was a MRAP course down in Summerville, South Carolina.
Okay.
And basically working on the 4x, 6x Cougars, and then working on the Buffalo. And what was cool about that was, if you've seen Transformers, the original one, at the end of it, there's a buffalo that's like skating down the street and he's got the big arm on it and stuff. We worked on that buffalo from the movie.
Oh, no
and
shit.
we're like, oh, that's, yeah, it was super cool. They had a metal Decepticon logo welded on the back door. I was like, that's fucking cool.
You got pictures of that?
Yeah. Oh, dude, I probably have them on a hard drive somewhere. I had them on my original like Sprint phone back in the day. But I do have photos somewhere of it. But yeah, it was because it was at the MRAP like factory. You know, they send you down to this course to learn how to work on it, how to do these things.
And of course, they're going to keep the one from the movie for sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the one we drove around on, dude. And I mean, they have you literally drive around their parking lot and then back it up, and they're like, all right, let's take it on the highway. And we're like, okay. And this was the day after the Marine Corps birthday, so all the Marines that were in the class went and just got smashed at like Texas Roadhouse, and we got kicked out. So the next day we're super hungover. Now we're driving this Buffalo for the first time. They're like, take it out on this highway. We're like, holy shit, here we go.
Oh my god.
Somebody should probably give that manufacturer a calendar and like circle November 10th.
Yeah.
Dude,
not this day.
It was not the day after.
Hilarious.
No, that's great. Another good experience, though. I mean, for sure. That gives you. I know a lot of the guys that, you know, supported us or supported me along the way. They would get out and work for Caterpillar or go work for some of these big companies because they already had the, you know, a lot of the necessary skill, and then they can go there and make a lot more money. Than what
there's jobs. There's contract jobs, and there's a thing. They have like an apprenticeship program in the Marines for all the technical skills.
Yeah.
And Motor T is one of them. Like, I could have logged all my hours, and no one really knew how to do it. No one had ever really done it, so none of us ever did it. I'm sure it's a good program, but there was like a way to get like different certifications and stuff by just logging the different work you're doing. But I kind of wish I would have taken advantage of it. I mean, I hated being a mechanic, absolutely hated it, but I will say I learned a lot and I saved a ton of money, like working on my own stuff.
Yeah.
Just understanding, like, oh, you know, like I could do basic stuff, like change my oil, change my brake pads and stuff. But I mean, there was some stuff we were learning. I'm like, oh, okay, like this is way easier than I thought.
Yeah.
You know, it's like anything else. Once you learn it, you're like, oh, that's not that hard.
Yeah. It's no longer afraid of it, or yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's where I get with. I'm not a great mechanic. I'm not mechanically inclined. I haven't done a bunch of it. Like I can do brakes, tires, oil, stuff like that, but I just I lack the confidence, right? So like I go to YouTube and look a lot up, but then I'm like, man, am I really gonna mess this Suburban up if I do this wrong?
Even as a mechanic, I do the same thing. I'll go on YouTube, I'll go on Reddit, I'll look at different like motor forum, like vehicle forums, and I'll look and find like step by step. And I don't really have one now, but back in the day when I had my Evo and I was working on it all the time, I'd have like a tablet and I would sit there and watch a video. I'm like, okay,
right
as
there,
I'm like under the car, and just
I changed the starter in an Acadia with YouTube. Same thing on the phone, like in my face. Okay, yep, that's that. Yep, okay, let's try it, and it worked.
That's like 3 bolts.
Yeah,
bolts,
it was it was way easier than I thought it was going to be. Same with the
and
boat.
You probably saved yourself $1,000.
Yeah, because they'll run you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so back in the day when I was in North Carolina, most vehicle shops charge like $100 an hour. Now it's like $150, $200 an hour for labor.
Yeah, it's like really stupid. It's really stupid. Yeah. That's a fact,
life, but
man.
Well, we don't do it for free.
Yeah. Well, no,
I get it. I mean,
he's a mechanic. He works in the oil field for like all the forklifts and stuff like that. So he does all that stuff, and they pay him.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, dude. It's a shitty job. Like,
yeah,
it takes forever. It literally would take like 5-8 days of leave, something like that, to get the grease out from underneath my fingernails.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like you're just constantly have grease and oil on you because you're in it all day long.
Yep.
It's just part of the job. So
yeah, shitty. I mean, some people I guess don't mind, but
no, dude, there were guys that loved it. Man, there were guys there that just that's all they wanted to do. They stayed in Motor T their whole career, and I'm like, I didn't want to do that. That's not why I joined. So yeah, I will grow where I'm planted. I mean, I'm not going to go in and be a shitty mechanic. I'm going to learn and try to be good at it. But I'm also going to be like disgruntled at the same time. You know, that's okay as well. So I went to Iraq in 2009 with, I think it was 2nd Supply Battalion. It was like,
so they just attach you to them?
Yeah. So the way it would work for mechanics or anyone, so when you were at Maintenance Battalion, when deployments to Iraq would come down, they'd be like, "Hey, we got to fill 30 spots." They would get a call, it'd be like, "Hey, you got to fill 30 spots." So then they'd pick 30 people that had deployed or not deployed, whatever, 30 names from the 2 companies, the motor transport maintenance companies, and then it'd be like, "Here's the 30 people." Okay, out of those 30 people, 20 of them are going as mechanics, 10 of them are going to go as combat MPs or whatever they're called. You would go with the MPs and you would learn more about weapons and stuff like that, and then you would go and be convoy security. Gotcha. So usually you got pulled, and everyone wanted convoy security because nobody wants to turn wrenches. Mm-hmm. No one wants to say like, "Yeah, I was in Iraq on base the whole time," you know, like turning wrenches. It was great. You know, everybody wants to be like, "I was outside the wire. I saw stuff. I did stuff."
Yeah.
So of course I got mechanic because that's my luck. And
it's a good trend going here in this career.
So what they would do is that's what they would do. They'd be like 30 people, 20 of you are mechanics, 10 of you guys are going over with the MPs. See you later. You're TED to them now. You 20 are our maintenance, Motor T maintenance platoon. Also, we're augmenting you with 50 reservists. Mm-hmm. And they would bring in reservists and stuff to augment it. And that was just rough because some reserve units are super chilled and their dudes are homies, and you know they all stay at the same hotel, and it's like, "Hey Bob, okay Frank," and then some of them are just like kind of active duty Marines. And I remember being on a truck the first day and being like, "Hey man, you know, hand me the 1/4-inch drive or whatever," and the guy like brings me over a wrench. I'm like, oh my god, like you're a mechanic? Like what the fuck? And they were like super. Like Lance Corporals didn't think that they were like Lance Corporals. So it was like, "Hey, go take out the trash." We're like, "Fuck you," you know, like you take out the trash kind of deal. Like it was just no good. All around, no good. That deployment was miserable. Out of my deployments, that was probably my worst.
That was Iraq, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just miserable because of the command and because of dealing with reservists. I almost got in trouble for shoving one of them one time. Like, I don't know. It was just shenanigans. So
why'd you shove them?
All right. So this fucking guy. This dude was a total piece of shit. 100%. And I'm going to start off with that because piece of evidence number one. We found out a few months into the deployment, like he's there with other reservists from his unit. And one of his girlfriend asked one of the other dude's chicks, like what was happening on the deployment and stuff, was like super concerned. This fucking guy had been writing her letters saying how they'd been in battle. He had to carry his dead buddy off the battlefield. Dude, we're getting green bean at fucking TQ. Like, quit fucking lying, bro. We're at an airfield. You got chow hall. You got the chow hall. You know, like, oh no, they didn't have pralines today on ice cream. Oh no. Like,
just straight stolen valor right out the gate, eh?
So that happened, and then he was one of those guys that was like, dude, I don't have to do what you say. Fuck you, kind of deal. Just bad attitude all the time. And one night I came out onto the shop floor, and it was just me. It was nighttime. It was me and him were the only people out on the shop floor. And I walked out, and he's working on this tow truck that I had been working on. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, don't fucking worry about it. And I'm just trying to make sure he doesn't fuck up the shit I already worked on because he didn't know what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, what are you working on? And he's like, don't fucking worry about it. And like pointed something. I think he pointed a screwdriver at me or something like that. And I'm like, motherfucker. And I just like leaped up on the back of this fucking tow truck or wrecker, I guess is a better way to call it, the wrecker. And I get in his face. I'm like, what the fuck are you? What is your problem? Like, what is your problem, dude? Like, I'm just trying to fucking this and that. He turns around and points the screwdriver in my face and says some shit, jumps down and tries to say some shit and turns around to walk. And I'm like, no, he doesn't. I jump down. He jumps down. Then I jump down behind him and he turns around. He shoves me. And I go, boom. And I'm like, and he's just this little piece of shit, like little flabby thing, no muscle, nothing. And I'm like, motherfucker, no, boom. And I'm over 6 foot tall. I've been under 200 pounds. The last time I was under 200 pounds was at the Crucible. You know, like I'm a big dude. And just boom, hit him. He goes flying back, slams into these the toolboxes and shit. And I'm like, okay, this is getting a little crazy. Let's take a step back. I go and tell my buddy who's like the sergeant in charge. I'm like, hey, dude, this is what just happened. Told my staff sergeant, this is what just happened. And they're like, all right, cool. Like nothing comes of it. Then no worries, no big deal, whatever. And then a couple days later, this fucking guy's getting in trouble for something else with my gunny. And he's like, oh, Lance Corporal Cramer did this to me. And, or Corporal Cramer. He's like, Corporal Cramer did this to me, shoved me or whatever. And then they had to start an investigation and all this shit. And, it was nothing. It was like, I wrote out, like, hey, you're being investigated. You have to write a statement. So I get on the computer. I type up a statement. Here's what happened. Here's what occurred. Print it out. I'm waiting for the gunny to call us in, bring it in. He's like, where's your statements? Hand him mine. Print it out. Here you go. Ask him for his. He pulls his out of his pocket, unfolds it. It's like got the spiral like paper fringe on the top where he ripped it out of a notebook. He hand wrote it in his like shitty chicken scratch hand. Gave it to the gunny, and he's like, "What the fuck? Like this isn't a statement. Like you can't use this." Anyways, dude was a total piece of shit. He basically been getting counseled ever since he attached to us, and we had to meet with the first sergeant. They're like, "You're not in trouble. You're fine. Don't worry about it." I'm like, all right, good to go. And then, but this dude is getting in trouble. And I sat in there while they talked to him and like he kept saying something stupid. Like, I don't know. He was like, I don't know. And the first sergeant's like, if you say, I don't know one more time, I'm recommending you for NJP. And he asked him it was a female first sergeant. She asked him another question. He's like, I don't know. And she's like, you're a fucking idiot. And fucking ran him up for NJP. We come back to the shop. We get out of the car or out of the vehicle, whatever. Everyone finds out so-and-so's getting NJP'd. I'm not. Then they make everyone get in formation, and then they present me with a good conduct medal. And my buddy goes, oh, I guess we get medals for hitting junior Marines now.
He didn't hit him. He just checked him.
I was like, damn, this is crazy. But he was a piece of shit, man, just all around. He was like pissing in bottles and leaving them in his we call them cans, the chews, the housing units.
Yeah. That's kind of gross. What, because he was too lazy to walk to the head?
Yeah, he's literally right next to the head. He couldn't get up and walk. And I get it, man. Sometimes people wake up and piss in a bottle and like then you throw it away. But he'd have like stacks of piss bottles in his little birthing spot. So, but yeah,
off with them. Off with them. That's gross. Yeah, man, that's wild. That's wild. Okay, so Iraq, uneventful. You about beat this kid's ass. You almost get in a little bit of trouble. You come back. You're getting close to time to reenlistment now, aren't you?
So I was supposed to that's when I did come up from reenlistment. So they hit us up. They're like, hey, the monitors are going to be here on this date. Those of you that are going to reenlist, you should go talk to them directly. And I was like, all right, cool. That sounds cool, And I wasn't sure yet if I was going to reenlist, but I was like, dude, if I'm going to stay in, I am not going to be a fucking mechanic. Like, fuck this. And one of my buddies was like, yeah, I think I'm going to go be a forward observer. And I was like, dude, yeah, that sounds like a cool ass job. And it was one I had brought up when I first decided to do it too. I was like, oh yeah, forgot it. And I think what happened with those jobs and with the Intel job was that I was like pre-approved. And then when they saw that I had been arrested multiple times, they're like, we can't give this guy clearance. And that's why I got kicked back from Intel.
That's probably true. Yeah.
I guarantee that's what happened. So, so while we were there, they're like, hey, reenlistments are coming up. If you guys want to reenlist, go ahead and do your paperwork. So I put in a request to do a lap move, and they're like, what do you want to do? I was like, all right, let's go be an 0861, let's see what, or 0861, let's see what that's all about. And
which is forward
like,
observer, correct?
Fire support man is the actual like terminology, but most people just say forward observer. But they were like, put in the request, there's only a certain amount of boat spaces. And I'm like, what the fuck's a boat space? Okay. So I put in my stuff, me and my buddy trucks. Do. Yeah. Boat spaces. Like, yeah. I'm not even in the Navy. What are you talking about?
Never even been on a boat yet.
So me and my buddy put in our stuff, and the monitors come down, and they initially tell us that both of us got denied, that we didn't get it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I go down, I talk to the career planner, and I'm like, hey, here's all my paperwork. And he's like, hey, man, they said there's 20 seats, and you guys didn't get it. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? Like, I don't know if I'm going to stay in then. And I was like, he's like, well, what else would you want to do? And I'm like, well, I could go be a tanker. And he's like, well, the thing with that is you can't lap move into that job until December. And by then the boat spaces for your job will be filled. So if you don't get that one, then you're kind of really screwed. And he's like, so would you want to stay in Motor T? And I'm like, hell no. And then I was like, well, I had a buddy who was Motor T, maintenance battalion. He went over to MARSOC, and he actually went on a MARSOC deployment as a Motor T guy and was like with a MARSOC team and a Green Beret team at some fucking little shithole in the middle of nowhere. And he was like their machine gunner, their mortarman, like doing all this cool shit. He got to go to like jump school, like all this stuff. And I was like, if I'm going to stay Motor T, then I want to at least go over there because at least there's opportunities to do cool shit. So I had him look up his name. Excuse me. I had him look up his name and unit. I was like, whatever his line number is, like that's exactly where I want to go.
Oh no.
He's like, all right, come in the next day and we'll fill out your paperwork. And I was like, all right, cool. Come in the next day and he's like, hey man, you're not going to MARSOC anymore. And I'm like, what the fuck, dude? I'm like, fuck this. And I'm a corporal. This is a gunny career planner. And I'm like, fuck this. This is fucking bullshit. I'm like venting.
Yeah.
And he let me for like a full minute. And then he's like, all right. He's like, now do you want to hear the good news? And I'm like, you never said there was good news, Gunny. He's like, you got your lap move. I was like, fuck yeah. And the career planners were in Iraq, and I guess one of them there saw my stuff and was like, we'll take one more. I don't know why, but they opened up an extra space, lap moved to 0861, got back from Iraq.
But your buddy didn't, huh?
He didn't.
Yeah.
No, it was kind of a rift because he was always ahead. I didn't know him in boot camp, but I did know him in MOS school. And he got like meritorious Lance out of MOS school for getting like 2 guys to join or some shit like that. So he was always like a rank ahead. And we were both corporals in Iraq. And then when we got back, he was like, hey man, I made the cutting score. I'm getting promoted to sergeant. I'm like, fuck yeah, dude. That's awesome. Like good. Congrats, dude. And then I went home for whatever reason and looked on my MOL, and I'm like, I don't even know, because I'm in a lap mover status. I don't even know what my MOS is right now. Mm-hmm. So I got on MOL, and it says I'm select grade E5. And I'm like, what the fuck? And my MOS was 08XX. So because my lat move had been approved and I'm just waiting to go to school and stuff, I still fall under the 0861 cutting score, which was much lower than the motor T1.
Right. So, yeah.
So I come into work and I'm like, dude, I'm getting promoted too. And he's like, man, fuck you, Cramer. Like, dude, it was crazy because my buddy, the one I went to who was a sergeant, I was a corporal, he was a sergeant. He picked up sergeant right after we met, and then we went to Iraq. I lat moved, picked up sergeant, and then got selected and promoted to staff sergeant before my buddy, who was a sergeant, got selected to staff sergeant. Because Motor T is such a slow promoting MOS, and 0861 is such a high stress MOS that guys are like, fuck this. You know, they do like I was at 12 year. I did getting out at 12 years is not uncommon. I know multiple staff sergeants that were like, nah, I'm good. You know, like I'm done. So we were always getting promoted. You could really, as an 0861, you could definitely get promoted to staff. I know a gunny who got promoted to gunny before his 8-year mark. You know, like not hard.
Yeah.
If you're good.
Yeah. Well, that's dope. So then you got to go off to school to, you know, get me to there. So I get back. I'm with Maintenance Battalion for a couple more months. We do our post-deployment leave and all that stuff. I still don't know what unit I'm going to or anything like that. I'm on post-deployment leave, and the career planner or the monitor calls me and he's like, hey, you're going to 210. Your 2nd Battalion, 10th Marines, check in with the liaison section there on Tuesday. And I'm like, whoa, I'm on post-deployment leave. I'm in like Tennessee, man. Like, you know, we'll have to fix that. So they adjusted it, checked into 210, met the guys there. And I think when I got there in October of 2009, it was October of 2009, I didn't actually go to MOS school until June of 2010. So for that whole time, I was just OJT, you know. Gotcha. I was like learning, you know, like I didn't know how to do anything. I was a motor T guy, not even a motor T guy at like a line company or at a battalion. I was a motor T guy with Maintenance Battalion, where all I was doing was turning wrenches. So they, you know, they had to show me how to plot on a map and shit. Here's how to use a radio. I'm a sergeant. Like I don't know any of this shit. And all my scouts, all the junior guys, all know this stuff. And I'm like, man, I feel like a piece of shit. Yeah, but that's kind of like a blessing, right? You look at it that way?
I mean, it was a blessing because I wasn't a mechanic. Let's be honest. That was the biggest. Here's a story for you. Once I went over to 10th Marines and I was there for a few months, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go back over to the old shop and say what's up to the dudes. And I drove over to Maintenance Battalion, parked, and I'm walking through the shop, and I'm like, hey, where's so and so? Where's Collins at? And they're like, oh, he's way in the back or whatever. And I remember this kid comes up. He's like, hey, excuse me. I was in my cam. He's like, excuse me, you're Sergeant Cramer? And I was like, yeah, what's up, man? He's like, are you the one that lat moved? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, how did you do that? Like, go talk to the career planner. And he was like, well, what do you got to do? And I'm like, you just need to go talk to the career planner, man. He's like, okay, cool. And no shit, I walked. I mean, the main Battalion shop is like 150 yards long. It's massive. And by the time I get to the other end, another dude stopped me. He's like, hey, are you Sergeant Cramer? You're the one. He's like, you're the one that lat moved. And I'm like, yeah. And everyone's like, he's the one that got out. Yeah. It was crazy, dude. Everyone was just
him.
So miserable.
He showed us the way.
It was fucking crazy. I was like, dude, I remember how miserable I was here. I'm so glad I'm not here. I remember I got to 10th Marines, and everybody's like, it fucking sucks here. Welcome. You know, and I'm like, what are you talking about? We're going to the field next week? Hell yeah. And everybody else is like, man, fuck this. And I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go to the field. We're sleeping on the ground, baby. You know, like
How long was it before that wore off?
Dude, I loved it the whole time, man.
Good.
I'm a field guy.
Good.
One of the best nights of sleep I ever had in the field was like I was in 29 Palms. We were in Yuma, and it was during rut for the MEU. It was like a workup, and it was miserable. I was working with the command center. I was fire chief, so I'm in the COC. You're on Yuma base, you know, working out of base X tents. It's so stupid. And I'm like, this is fucking dumb. And they're like, hey, we want you to go out and evaluate the fire support guys from the battalion. So we're sending you to 29 Palms. I'm like, thank God. And I remember getting out there, and the first night I'm sleeping next to the tire of an LAV. And I just remember looking out and seeing this like sandstorm coming across 29 Palms, and I'm like, oh shit. And I just roll over with my poncho over my head and just pass out and have the best night's sleep. Everybody else the next day is like, dude, that sandstorm was crazy. And I was like, I don't remember any of it. I slept through all that shit. But,
something about sleeping outside, man. Even now in my life, like I take my kids camping a lot, and like I liken it to the ocean, like salt, the water, the sound, whatever. It relaxes me. Same thing when I'm in nature, when I'm out hunting or I'm out camping, and I can look up, see the stars, and that's the best sleep I ever get.
I loved it, man. Yeah, I talked about it on a recent video, being out on San Clemente Island, right off the coast of Camp Pendleton. You're like 30 miles off the coast. There's no light pollution. There's nothing on the island except for on one side. There's a small Navy detachment that creates no light. Mm-hmm. So you just see all the stars. There's little island fox running around and shit. Like, I don't know.
It's awesome.
Super cool, man. It's like definitely a once in a lifetime kind of opportunity to do that kind of stuff. But so I got to 10th Marines. I was there. I was doing field ops. They actually had me chief like my first fire like field op before I'd even gone to MOS school, because I'd been working with these guys. And my mentor, I guess, Gunnery Sergeant Klein, was just like, he knew everything. He knew all about fire support. I mean, he was like, it made it so much easier because when he knew, the battalion commander never worried about us. Like, we never had any kind of top like pressure. Mm-hmm. He always took care of it. Like anytime there was a question, he had the answer. He was the fire supporter for the unit, and he was just like such a good person to learn from. And when it came around to deployments, normally if you're a lap mover 0861 sergeant, and at the time when they were sending guys to Afghanistan, they were like, well, you need some FO experience. So you're going to go down with the companies and be an observer. You're going to go down as an observer with the line companies and do that job. That's a Lance Corporal's job, but you haven't done it yet. So you're going to go do that. Well, they needed a fires chief for 3-6 and they didn't have anybody. And I felt like I knew the job pretty well, and they had enough faith in me. They were like, look, as long as he goes to fires chief's course at Fort Sill, then we're going to make him the chief for 3-6's deployment. And I was like, fuck, man. Like, I didn't want to do that. I was like, I want to go down with the companies. Like, I don't want to work in the command center. So I was kind of butthurt about it, but I was like, whatever, dude. Well, it wasn't a big deal because I ended up doing all the calls for fire from the command center, using PGSS, the blimps, and the cameras. Mm-hmm. If anything was happening, it would get radioed to us, and we just controlled everything from there. So, yeah.
And so you went to that school then, right?
Oh, yeah. So before I went to that, we went to Bragg. There's a march in October Bragg that 10th Marines will do every year called Rolling Thunder. It's a month-long exercise there. And it was, I think, in February of 2010. I believe it was in February. I could be wrong on the date. But it was, we were there, and I was the fires chief at the time, and I was approving a mission. And that's when one of the howitzers exploded. I don't know if you heard about when that happened or not, but there was we had a round. What happened was the fuse was faulty on it. It was kind of, think of like a 203, it spins so many times and it's set. And then when it hits something, it explodes. Well, it was already set. So when they attached it to the round and then they rammed it into the gun, it went off. It blew up, and the two guys ramming it, there was two guys that were ramming it, and there was a corpsman standing right behind the breech. Took like all the blast. It blew the barrel off. It blew the gun apart. Luckily, nobody was killed. There was a ton of people injured and stuff like that.
I can't believe they weren't killed.
Dude, I mean, none of us.
Video of this?
There's no video, but there's pictures. I put a post on my former Action Guys Instagram page not too long ago with pictures of it. But, I mean, it just reinforced stuff like wearing sappy plates and stuff. Like, there was a guy that was on the gun that in one of the photos you could see there's a piece of metal sticking right out the center of his sappy plate. Would have went right into his chest had he not been wearing his gear,
smoked.
Yeah, pretty crazy. So that happened. Like, that was nuts. And then a couple days later, the next day we were shooting again. And then a few days after that, we were finished. I left early and got sent to Fort Sill. While I was at Fort Sill, 3-6 was doing their EMV. They were out in 29 Palms during their pre-deployment training. And I got back to Camp Lejeune and met with them the day before they started pre-deployment leave. So no one knows who I am. I show up. I'm like, hey, what up? I'm the fires guy.
And this is 09?
No, this is 2011.
2011. I'm sorry. I was off.
Yeah, Iraq was 09, and then 2011 was when I was in Marja with 3-6.
Check.
So, yeah.
Check.
And then we deployed, and flew into FOB Marja and started that whole thing.
And how did so that would have been Marja 2.
Yeah.
And there were still things going on. Yeah, there were still things going on in Marja 2, eh?
Yeah. So at the time, 3-6 shows up. We take over FOB Marja, and they're withdrawing some. So during the plus up was when the assault of Marja and all that stuff happened. And now they're trying to withdraw some of the troops. So 3-6's AO is pretty huge.
Yeah.
Weapons. Normally I would have been with Weapons Company as the fires guy, but I got moved to headquarters, and Weapons Company got their own AO, all the Sistani Gap, whole area on Eastern Marja. We had Alpha 19 to our east. I think we had Alpha 19 to our east, to our east. Sistani was on the west, and then we had Charlie 16 attached to us as well. So we had 6 line companies basically. Huge AO.
Okay.
And I mean, I remember showing up, man. My first day, we flew into FOB Marja, and I'm like, it is black as fuck out here. There's like no light. You see little cooking fires and stuff, and that's really it. And we land, and I get off the bird. My captain's there to meet me, and he's like, "Hey, man, I want you to meet Master Gun so-and-so. He's the ops chief, blah, blah, blah. This Master Gun's there. He's in PT gear." And he's like holding his stomach. He's like, "Hey, what's up, Devil Dog?" You know, and I'm like, "Hey, what's going on, Master Guns?" And he's like, "All right, I got to take off." And Captain's like, "Dude, like everybody's sick. They ate something. Tons of people are sick." And everyone had like double drag. Everyone's like shitting and throwing up.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it was bad chicken or something like that, but they ended up having to like medevac like 25% of the people off the FOB because there were so many people were sick. Literally the next day, you were there before FOB Marja. Did you ever make it to the actual like FOB Marja?
No.
There's no running water. There's no, it's wag bags and like piss tubes and stuff like that. And I would see like a dude running for the wag bag and then just kind of stop in defeat and keep walking. You just see the shit start running down his legs because he didn't make it in time.
Oh yeah, we had those same experiences in the push, man. It was there was no showers, no running water, and there was a lot of dysentery to go around.
Dudes getting sick.
Yeah, water was bad. And when you're fighting in that, there's no way to avoid it. You're trying to cross a canal, and you're getting that stuff in you, and they're shitting in it, pissing in it, parasites in it. You don't even have to drink it, and it's going to get in you. And we did the same thing. We had to medevac guys, mainly for dysentery, because, like you said, it was coming out both ends, and they couldn't hold anything down, including water usually. Yeah. And so they'd get extremely dehydrated, and then they'd catch a fever, and so it just would deteriorate very quickly after that.
Yeah, so it was that's exactly what it was. Everyone was sick. I saw this dude shit himself, and I'm like, what the fuck? And then like 30 minutes later, someone's like, "Hey, there's a suicide bomber down the street." Like, we hear all this commotion, and some like, Taliban dude tried to blow himself up. His vest malfunctioned. He just caught himself on fire and like burned himself to death. And I'm like, damn, like this is first day. Like, this is way different than being a mechanic in Iraq. Like, this is not. Dude. I'm like, well, careful what you ask for. Here we go, kind of deal. So,
right. Now talk to me a little bit about the piece of integrating with, with a team that's foreign to you, that you're being attached to these people. Did your integration go good, or did you find parochial attitudes and personalities during that time?
Well, so we had our team, our fire support team from 10th Marine. So it wasn't just me going over. It was like our whole fire support team is getting attached. What underneath me it would be me and my captain, and then I had a radio operator, and then actually 2 radio operators, and then 3-6 provided 2 mortar representatives.
Check.
And then underneath us, my scout that I brought from 10th Marines, along with an artillery lieutenant and a radio operator, they would each go to a company. And then when I didn't meet any of the 3-6 guys until right before we deployed, it was like, "Hey, what's up, guys?" My captain made all the liaison. They did the pre-deployment training with them and shit. And when I first got to Afghanistan, it kind of sucked because my captain's like, "Hey, most of the stuff's going on during the day. I'm the captain, so I'm going to be doing the day shift. You can come in here and work at night." And I'm like, "Man, that sucks. Like, there's nothing going on at night." And then not only that, quickly it became 1,000,000 fucking degrees outside, and we're staying in these tents, and they're completely sealed up because they have AC that they're trying to pump into them. Well, when it gets super ass hot out, all the generators die because they are too hot. So now you're in this completely sealed tent and it's just baking.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first month, dude, I was literally probably getting 30 to 45 minutes of sleep a day. Like literally, because it was so fucking hot. I would just lay there and sweat. I was losing my mind. I would get up to go walk around Fob Marja just to get a breeze to like blow on the sweat. And it was like, after a while, I was like literally starting to lose my mind. And then my captain got called up to go do IO, information operations, like radio in a box, you know, running the radio stations, doing leaflets and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So he got pulled to go do that full time. I became the full-time fires guy. I was the guy. So I went from only being in there at night to being in the command center probably anywhere from 16 to 18 hours a day, if not more sometimes, because there was no one else that could do piss off. But it was good, man. It was, you know, we had a little team. We had some issues here and there, but overall the guys were good. You know, I mean, what can you ask? I mean, I guess I couldn't really complain too much, but no issues, I guess. I don't know. It was interesting.
No, that's a great thing. That's a great thing. I know that, you know, in days of past, reintegration or integration into teams can be, it can go one of two ways. It can go really good or it can go not good at all. And if you have, you know, parochial attitudes or parochial personalities inside of either your team or the team that you're trying to integrate into, and people want to, you know, play a power structure game or a rank game or a billet game, it can complicate that. Thankfully,
that did happen. I mean, that happened with the master sergeant that we had mainly, who was the A chief, the A ops chief.
Mm-hmm.
He was very much, I don't know. I told him, like, master sergeant, if you need something, just tell me. Like, whatever you need, just let me know, and I'll take care of it. But he was one of those guys. I had like a footlocker behind my desk that had a bunch of pubs in it. You know, different documents for different things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, if I need to run into this situation, let me just pull the pub out and check real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, hey, I remember one day he's like, hey, do you need those pubs over there? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just keeping them right here, you know, in this box right by me. And he's like, oh, you think it'd be better if they were back there, like behind the TVs or some shit? And I'm like, no, I kind of like them right here. And he's like, oh, yeah, but what if maybe you put them back there? Like, do you think that would be cool? And I'm like, well, no, because they're right here. And I go, and he was like, look, motherfucker. And he like took me outside and he's like, you fucking fire support guys think you know something that no one else knows, so you can just say and do whatever the fuck you want. And I was like, Master Sergeant, if you want something, fucking say it. If you don't want me to put the pubs there, then say that. But if you give me the option, hey, what do you think? Well, I think I want them there. If you don't want them there, then just fucking say it. Quit dancing around it, kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I didn't say it with that kind of veracity, but it was not too far off. He hated me and the JTAC because it was me as the fire support chief sergeant and a JTAC sergeant, enlisted guys, and he just fucking hated our side of the table, you know, because I don't know. I don't know
he's
why,
a master sergeant, right? He's enlisted.
And he was also, I found out later, he was also a JTAC. But he was very good because he got like, it was like one of those things where he got the qualification because they needed someone, but he never actually used it because his job doesn't.
Yeah, or maybe he didn't need to. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was just like, it was very frustrating. And I don't know, it was, I don't even, it's weird to bring this up, but he like called me racist one time and he was not even joking about it. He was a black dude.
Yeah.
And he was like, who do you think's hotter? What's that chick from... God, I'm going to get Halle Berry. I was about to get fucking hate for that, for even forgetting her name. Halle Berry. Or what was that one blonde chick that was a Sports Illustrated model who was like, no, not Heidi Klum. Later on, she was like.
Good mics.
It was something like that. It was this other chick. And I was like, oh, this other chick. He's like, you're fucking racist. And I'm like, what? And he's like, there's no way you think she's hotter than her. He's like, the only reason you think that is because you're fucking racist. And I'm like, but I'm not. I just think she's hotter. Like, Halle Berry's hot, don't get me wrong, but she's much older. You know, it's definitely your era, obviously. You know? Like, don't hate. Yeah.
That's a stretch. That's a stretch for racism for me. But I will say this: I think
that's how he treated us, though. He was one of those guys. That's how he would treat you. Like I'm talking to you because I'm a racist or something. I'm like, dude, like I can't believe you even said that. And then to like carry it on even after that. it was just very frustrating.
Yeah.
So.
Well, misery loves company sometimes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I bump heads with people, man.
Yeah. Hey, bumping heads isn't even a bad thing. I'm about it. But once you realize you're not going to gain anything from the situation or make any impact, then it's like, okay, on to the next. I'm going to go make an impact somewhere else. Sometimes you can't do that if they're in your chain of command, though, right? So.
Oh, I mean, I was sitting right next to the guy every day.
That sucks.
Yeah. So. It was one of those things where, I don't know, it's just when you work with some people in close environments for that amount of time, for that extended period of time, attitudes flare up. I'm sure.
Yeah, but if that's the biggest.
If he and I ran into each other today, I'm sure we could sit down and bullshit and have a good conversation and stuff. It was just,
for sure. For sure.
You know,
and if that's the biggest issue you had personality-wise during that, then I'd say that's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Because I've heard guys tell, just horror stories where there was just no assimilation, there was no integration, there was no help, and that sucks. It's not the way it should be. So I mean, probably with 362 doing the push, doing a workup, coming back in for number 2 right after that, I think a lot of them were like everybody was, at least until I left to go to school, which some of the new command was there. At that point, they were very much not fuck around. Like, we just lost people. We just went through a horrible deployment, or you could call it a really good deployment. We did really, really good things, but it was work, and I think everybody was just work mindseted all the way, at least through the time I left there, and so that probably helped. And
when did you leave there?
So we got back in like August
2010 is when
August
we
of
left
10, and then I went to school TAD for a couple months. Came back, checked in for I was at 3-6, maybe like a week or two in transition, and then I checked in over as an instructor at ITB. So I went to combat instructor course.
I remember right before we deployed, there was a guy that got a spider tattoo on his neck, thinking that would get him out of the deployment. They're like, well, we're going to kick you out, but not until the deployment's over.
After the work's done.
Good job.
Yeah, you're still going, bro. And then another guy who was not supposed to deploy, he was going to be RBE, or the remain behind element. Someone came up and told him, they're like, hey, you're going on guard force. And he thought that they meant for the deployment. And for those that don't know, like, what happens is when the infantry battalion deploys, or this is what it was in Afghanistan, a certain portion of the unit has got to get pulled to stand guard posts. Someone's got to stand these, guard posts at the FOBs and stuff. So he thought he got tagged to go still deploy and be a guard guy. What do they call it? Guard force guy, and jumped off like the second or third story.
I heard about this shit.
Barracks.
I heard about that shit.
Yeah, and there was like that Hispanic first sergeant that was like super moto, was like standing right there, I guess. And when he landed, he just like started yelling at him like, "You dumb fuck!"
Might have been first sergeant Moto. No, it's
Moda. Sorry.
Yeah, that was his
was
name.
Him. Yeah,
Moda. Yeah,
that's it. I remember.
Yeah, that's funny because he was on that first one.
Yeah.
He was on that first one, so he would not have taken kindly to somebody trying to dodge the second one.
He was the weapons company first sergeant at the time for the second deployment. Because I was pissed because I was supposed to fall under him in weapons company, but then when they were like, hey, we're splitting the AOs, weapons going to get their own, they pulled us out of weapons company and sent us to headquarters. And I was like, man, fucking lame. I don't want to be with the headquarter lames, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah, Moto wasn't bad, man. Like, we didn't have very much interaction with him because he wasn't our company, or he wasn't,
I don't even, was he India? Or
India,
Lima?
maybe. It was a different company, I think.
Yeah, he was a line company first sergeant when we were there, though.
Yeah, I remember when we were coming out of Marja, we went to that Kyrgyzstan or whatever it was for like just a hot second before we catch another flight. And maybe you were with me, but it was like me and Herbie and Scotty,
of course.
Yeah, the whole crew, right? And they had this one little MWR center that had a that had a pool table, and so me and Herbie were shooting pool against each other, and Moto, shout out, he's like easing through there, like looking mean, like a first sergeant, just looking to fucking chew somebody's ass about something stupid. Yeah, he's not little. He's moving through, and Herbie was just about to like make a shot or whatever, and hit him with the stick, and came through. He's like, "What the fuck, dude?" And it was Moda. He's like, "Yeah, what the fuck, dude?" And like we had a little thing. Everybody was happy that we were where we were because not a lot of people thought we would. Like there was a lot of thoughts in people's mind that we wouldn't get out of there. And they just had that "what the fuck, dude? What the fuck, dude?" And like he did a little ass chewing. Yeah, like my bad. Yeah, Moda. I think he might have came to ITB after that too.
Oh, I don't know.
He went over to Echo Company, maybe something like that.
I was out at that point.
That's funny. That kid jumped to break his leg to try to get, or was he trying to kill himself? Like kill himself, or
I think he might have been trying to kill himself. I'm pretty sure he landed face first. He lived. I think he broke his back or something.
Yeah, that's
stupid. Just stupidity. It's like you weren't even deploying, idiot. Like you're that dumb.
My life is over. Well, I heard he swan dove off of the third deck. I can't believe he lived.
No, yeah.
That also happened the week I checked into 3-6 too.
It's just a thing over there. You get those H barracks, dude, and people think they can fly.
I had interviewed a guy who was a MUCO, and he was also with another. I can't remember. He was an Anglico CO, but he was also a MUCO. And he was saying that he was one of the lieutenants on duty called him up one day and was like, "Sir, you got to come in." And some kid had cut his fucking finger off to not deploy. He said the kid took like string or something and wrapped it until the finger had turned like purple or something, and then he said he used a K-bar to like a paper cutter and chop the fucking thing off.
Did they make him deploy?
Right there. Well, he was like, "Well, no, you're not deploying, but you're also gonna get charged now, fucking idiot." Like he admitted it. Like, I did it.
Of government
He's like,
property.
"Now you're a coward. Like you're not only an idiot, but you're a coward."
Yeah, and you're gonna be a broke coward for a little while.
So he wasn't with 3-6 though.
No, this is a different.
It wouldn't have surprised me if he was.
But it's just crazy. That's the shit you hear about dudes doing to get off deployment. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, man, it's wild.
There's got to be an easier way than that.
Wild. Yeah, I don't know. I never had those thoughts. I was always on the other side. I was ready to go.
Man, I was pumped. I was like, oh shit, we're finally doing it, and then there I was in Marja. And I guess, fire support wise, like my first call for fire was, again, I was in the command center, and we were sitting there, and this was when it was still nighttime. This is when I was still working on night, so it was still pretty early in deployment. Mm. And I'm sitting there doing something on my computer, and somebody was like, "Hey, is that an IED in place, sir?" And I'm like, "What?" And I turn, and if you've never been in one, it's kind of like TV, but not as dramatic. But they have in the command center multiple TVs, that have like different facts on them. Yeah, big screen, 70-inch TVs that have like maps or have the PGS, the blimp feed on it, or tower feeds, different camera feeds. And we got one piped in from one of the other patrol bases. Like we could see all the cameras from all the patrol bases at Fob Marja, the way we had it wired up. And someone's like, "Is that an IED in place?" And I'm like, "What?" And I look over and I'm like, "Oh shit, there's like 3 of them." And we're like, "That is an IED in placer." And I'm getting ready to go on Merc chat and send up a call for fire and request a goalpost is what it's called. So what would happen? I was gonna do a call for fire for HIMARS, which is now famous in Ukraine. At the time, you would send up the call for fire over Merc chat, over like a chat, kind of instant messenger chat, and you just had it all formatted out on like a document. And you just fill in whatever line you need to fill in, target elevation, whatever. Copy it, paste it in the Merc chat. It sends it to the battery. At the same time, you request a goalpost, is what they call it, which is an airspace control measure. And what it does is it opens up an area around the target and an area around the launcher, because these HIMARS rockets shoot like 70,000 feet up into the sky or something like that. They have to clear all that airspace.
Yep.
And it creates the actual image. If you see it on a map, it looks like a goalpost, because they're not going to clear all the airspace between the launcher and the target. So just to where it's going to fly. And they have to clear commercial aircraft out of the way, like everything, to make these shots happen. And so I go to send it up, and all the data goes down. It's like, all the chat's down, everything's down. I'm like, oh shit. And the guy that I took over for had this netted iridium radio, which is kind of like a walkie-talkie SATCOM radio. It's like I only ever saw him in Afghanistan, and it's just a push-to-talk SATCOM radio. And he was like, "Yeah, I do radio checks on it twice a day with the battery and with the approval agency." The battery was at Leatherneck, the approval agency was at Dwyer. Yep. And I was like, "Okay, well, I'll just keep doing that." And as the deployment went on, that's what I did. And then when all the data went down, I was like, "Oh shit!" Grabbed the radio, and I'm like, this is me, fire for effect, grid 1, 2. I'm doing an actual like call for fire. And I'm like shaking, dude. I'm like oh shit, because my heart's pounding. These are real dudes. Like, this is the first time. This is for real.
Yeah.
I turn around, everybody and their brother standing over my shoulder watching, because everybody wants to see a strike. So everybody comes in. It's like the S4 Alpha. What's he doing in here? He's watching Kill TV. And so I'm like fucking shaking. And I'm just like, grid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Send all the information. Ready. I'm watching. They're still digging. Look at the OPSO, the operations officer, get the thumbs up, like, good to go. I'm like, fire, target number 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, and get shot. We're watching, and just boom, splash, and just whites out the camera for a second, comes back. 3 dudes are down. One guy's like stumbling around and shit. He's like, they're all fucked up. One guy comes over and tries to pick his buddy up and pick him up and fire carry him somewhere else, and he falls over a couple times. And
heavily
my captain,
concussed.
the OPSO, oh, for sure, yeah. This OPSO, like, he's like, can you do that again? I'm like, yeah. Repeat. Target number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like, whatever.
Funny you should ask.
Only time you're allowed to say it.
Yeah. I'm like, hell yeah, we can do that again. Repeat. And get everything. Is it approved? It's approved. Fire, target number, whatever. And then data comes back up, so I'm getting on the Merc chat, and we're watching. And as we're watching, the guy starts stumbling away from the impact area. And we're like, oh, shit. Time of flight is about a minute, I think, where we were at for HIMARS.
Right that time.
And we're like, oh, he's going to stumble out of the area. And he didn't get far enough. It just screen whited out again.
Yeah,
and when it came back, he was gone. I think they only found his foot, but...
Now, was this a single rocket? Like each time was a single rocket? Single
yeah,
HIMAR?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and what happened is one, the guy that we got was there was 3 guys. One of them, though, had just come from Pakistan and was there to train IED emplacers. So we got him, like, on his first day. Like,
perfect.
Yeah, like, fuck off.
Get him before he spreads the knowledge. Yeah, we seen that. We seen the HIMARS once, and then we had a situation like that once. The HIMARS ended up badly. When we were there in 10, when we were there in 10, you had to use a vector dagger shot, and we were on the point of an attack, and it was naughty, dude. Both ways, just laying in. You got a little video of it, but I never seen HIMARS before. Like I had never seen an impact from HIMARS in training. I just learned how to call them beforehand because it's kind of like a newer thing for us to have available to us there. And I remember working with him and working with Matt and Jesse Bennett, my 2 dog team leaders. We're getting all that stuff done, and then wouldn't you know it, like on the second day of the push or something, we get to fire them, and that's seriously like the hand of God coming down and just smashing.
It looks like a small nuke. You get a little mushroom cloud.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. And then the other thing that resonated was that inside the COC, it's just like that. I don't care what COC you're in. If you got TVs up and you have a feed, when there's any munitions that's fixing to be dropped on something, it's like like the last 2 minutes of a football game. Everybody's around, and then when something happens that's good, the entire place cheers. I remember we were on React, and I had these guys. I don't know if they were digging in. I believe they were digging in. They parked a moped sideways and thought that was going to be a way that they could, get cover from our cameras or something. But we had a G-boss way up in the sky, and it's just watching them,
Yeah.
And they parked the thing sideways. There was a lookout, and then they put a tarp over the emplacer, and he would be emplacing. And they hit me up. They're like, "Yo, Rogers, go get him." I was on React. And our squad was heavily used for that kind of stuff, just to go get people or go hit them hard. And they're like, "Yo, go get him. This is where he's at." I seen him. I seen what they were doing. He knew about it. We got guys down at the gate. We're about to step out of 5 Points, Cop Riley, and I get another call, and it's my company commander. He hits me up. He's like, "Yo, Roger, double time. Get to the COC." And all my guys are standing there. We're all tacked up, ready to go get these fuckers. And I'm like, shit. So I jump down, drop down my gear, and I sprint because from the south entry or exit up to the COC is a little jog, right? And I jog up there and I come in, and it's like that Arctic blast hits me that they're all sitting in. It's 130 degrees, 120 degrees outside. I get in there, and I don't remember if it was my CO. Somebody just like they're all standing around the TV, and somebody like bumps my shoulder and hands me a hot cup of coffee. He's like, "Watch this," and I'm watching them here. I thought I was going to go get these assholes, and they had a I don't know if it's an MQ-9. They had I think they had a what was it? Predator.
I want to say it was a Harrier.
I want to say it was a Predator.
No, I think it was a Harrier.
Hellfires.
It was a Hellfire for sure, but I'm pretty sure it was a Harrier.
It was something that they didn't know was there.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been a Hellfire off a Harrier. It would have been a Reaper. Or it was probably either a Reaper or a Predator.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I would guess. Anyway, they're like, yeah, we got him. Hellfire's on station. Watch this. And I'm watching the screen, and these guys are like digging in, right? And I think they must have heard like the rocket initiate or release or something.
Yeah.
Because the two that were kneeling, or was it only two, or was it?
It was only two.
It was only two. So they were both kneeling down. As soon as like whatever that was, it was just a short delay. They stood up, like ran into each other and exploded. Boom, like that. Like they both knew to get away from something though. So they heard something right before the explosion, and that was wild. The whole entire like you said, the whole entire COC. Bah! And then we had to go up and do
battle damage assessment. Wait on EOD, which EOD got there in like 2 hours.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, but that's something that I've definitely been a part of, and it's exactly how you described it.
That's pretty common. So what happens with the Hellfire shot is a Hellfire is not faster than the speed of sound. So right before the rocket impacts, they hear the crack.
Okay,
and that always happens. You'll see guys that are digging and they jump up and they'll run, or they'll be running. We had a guy that was running, and they shot the Hellfire, and he heard it right before it impacted, and you saw him put his head down and boop, 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 like sprint real hard, and the rocket landed behind him and just like hit his back with shrapnel. No, it didn't kill him though. He lived.
Oh wow.
We went and medevaced him, but we were like, damn, did you see him? Like you can see his head go down, and he sprints like super hard because he heard the sound. On my second deployment, I was talking to one of the linguist, and he was saying that the locals, like we would talk about with a kid, like, oh, the boogeyman's going to get you. That was their boogeyman, that crack noise. And it was the crack, and then an explosion would kill someone. That crack noise was their boogeyman. That's what they would tell their kids.
No shit.
Yeah, it was like, keep messing around and the crack noise will get you kind of deal. I was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, that's a different childhood,
crazy.
Right?
Yeah, that's wild.
And it's
Afghanistan was a different place, man.
You mentioned the foot. That's all that was left of them too.
Yeah, that was interesting that you said that, because that Hellfire that we hit on those guys, which there may be a little bit left. Here's an interesting thing. It blew one of them out of their shirt, and the buttons were still done. You ever seen some shit like that?
Dude, I mean,
that's wild.
I've seen shit on both sides you wouldn't believe. You're like, wow, like I can't believe that guy lived through that. You know, I saw a guy, we were tracking these two vehicles that had been firing on some dudes. This vehicle was going down the road. They shot a Hellfire at it. This Cobra shot a Hellfire at it, hits right behind the motorcycle, boom, blows the two dudes off the motorcycle. I'm pretty sure, I think one of them died right there. Or no, I don't know. I can't remember. I don't think he died actually. The second, we thought he was dead. He was knocked out. The second guy jumped up and started running, and the Cobra came back around, was like, I'm going to do rockets and guns, or he's going to do a gun run. Comes back around like, you know, with that 25 millimeter, just, and you just see the ground around him exploding. Looks like Rambo, and this dude just comes running through the smoke to the other side of it. We're like, no fucking way, and he ended up getting away.
I mean, he earned it. In my opinion, you earned it, dude.
The other guy that we thought was dead, the ANA, the Afghan National Army guys, went to go pick his body up. And when they went to pick him up and throw him in a wheelbarrow, because that's how the Taliban ambulance out there. Yeah. They threw him in a wheelbarrow. He woke up. He was just knocked out. They thought he was dead.
Well, good. Maybe they can get some intel. The other dude that ran away, though, you know he is the boss in his fucking village, dude.
Oh, I bet.
Well,
yeah, I think there was something
for a short
with
period of time, probably.
We looked for him for a little while. They tracked him for a little bit, and then I think our rotors time on station ran out. They ran out of gas. Yeah. So we didn't have anything follow on.
That's an interesting thing, though. Like, that is wild. And I seen a little bit of that too. Like there were times that we were just putting, walls of lead and guys would make it out. And then there was times like even people that I did kill, it was like the human body can take a lot of damage, you know, in my opinion, from my experiences to kill somebody. Yeah, that's wild. What were, you know, I know you jumped a little bit forward to your second deployment, but what are some of the more memorable fire missions that you've had that you haven't talked about yet?
So for the first deployment, we did that HIMARS shot, and then we did 3 HIMARS shots during that deployment. We did multiple drops with air as well. Some memorable ones, you know, the first airstrike was pretty memorable because I was doing piss off it's called Precision Strike Suite Special Operations Forces.
Oh, I thought you were like fuck off, like you were just fucking off.
No, it's targeting.
Like you were pissing off somewhere.
It's targeting software called Piss Off.
Okay, Roger.
And I was doing the targeting. So we had a group of guys move into a compound, and as they were moving up to it, an IED went off that was in the compound wall. I think it injured a linguist or something. It might have injured a Marine, but I don't think it did. Well, we knew these guys were out, and we had air on station. So on the other side of the compound, we watched these 2 dudes run out of the compound and take off. And they started running, and we're tracking them as they're dealing with the injuries that are on the X at the time. So we know, like, hey, there's no shooting or anything. It was an IED strike. We're watching the 2 guys that did it, and we just start tracking them.
What are you tracking them with? Do you have ISR up or?
Yeah, we had probably a Predator or something.
Okay.
Either a Predator or Scan Eagle. The Scan Eagle is like a smaller one than the Predator, but it's unarmed.
Yep.
Yeah, so we had that guy. We had that. So we're tracking them. We watch them run out to this like field, and they were in this corner of this field where these 2 walls came together, and they start just digging. And we're like, what the fuck are they doing? They're like digging for weapons or burying weapons or doing something. We're just watching them dig. While this is all happening, we're trying to get approval to blow these dudes up. You know, they just fucking set off an IED. And we get approval, have a Harrier come around, drop a 500-pounder on these 2 dudes, smoke those guys.
Imagine.
And then we keep a Predator overhead. Once you do a strike, so anytime you do a strike in Afghanistan or anywhere, you have to maintain surveillance overhead until you get BDA, until you get on the ground BDA. Sometimes that's waived if it's too dangerous or there's a certain situation. But normally they keep air on station, watching the target area, because now it's like almost like a crime scene kind of deal. We want to make sure we know what's going on for a good reason, and I'll get to that. Because once those guys were done at the compound where the IED went off, then we're like, hey, the dudes, we just struck them. They're over here. Here's the coordinates of where they're at. And while they're finishing up what they're doing and getting ready to move over, anytime there's a strike, tons of civilians come out. The Taliban ambulance, like I said, comes out. It's the wheelbarrow. They just throw them in the wheelbarrow and fucking do whatever. Yeah. Well, we watch them roll these dudes up in like rugs and like carry them off to a tree line that's like 100 yards away and throw them in the tree line. So when the infantry guys get over there, when the platoon or squad or whatever that was out came over, they start telling them, they bring up some little girl that's been hit with something. Like she's got injuries. Mm-hmm. And they're like, wait, they're saying that we hit a girl, blah, 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 blah. There's a civilian casualty, da, 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 da. Like she's not dead or anything. She's just injured. And we're like, there's no way. Like we've been watching it literally the whole time. We saw the 2 guys. It was in the open. There was just literally a mud wall. That was it. And they're like, no, they're saying that there's no dudes. It was just this girl here and that we blew up a girl. And we're like, no, dude, go to this grid in the tree line and there you'll see the 2 bodies. And they went over, they just ignored those dudes, went over, found the bodies. But because they said that we had we had injured a civilian, an investigation had to take place. Right. And they flew in some Air Force, I think he was a general, but he might have, I think he was a full bird colonel. I don't think he was a general, a full bird colonel, to come down and do this investigation. And he saw the video one time of what we saw, and he's like, oh, no, you guys are totally fine. But we have no idea where they brought this injured girl from. So they brought her out of nowhere, and they tried to hide the body. And so that's why we would have to keep persistent surveillance on whatever it was, because of shit like that.
Sure. Sure. And so like what a lot of people don't see the second and third order effects of that. And I seen that for the first time when I was in Iraq. Early in my career, second and third order effects can be detrimental to the success of the line infantry in that area. Like, they come out and say you killed a couple fucking kids, it turned a village on you. They come out and say that you blew a mosque out, it turned a village on you if there wasn't good reason. I remember when we were in Iraq, we hit a mosque. Something happened. Somebody hit a mosque. It wasn't me. It wasn't my unit. They hit a mosque, but in the process of that, a bunch of Qurans, obviously, that were inside the mosque probably got damaged. Well, what they did is the Al-Qaeda, they went in and got all the mosques, all the Qurans and, you know, their holy books and stuff, and then they put them in a big pile and burned them. And then they made propaganda videos blaming U.S. forces for doing that, which we had absolutely no part of and could prove. Mm-hmm. But their people aren't seeing that. They're seeing the Al Jazeera. They're seeing that kind of stuff. And then things can get drastically different in like that coin environment. So things like that are great to stay over top, so you can have that clearance not only for yourself, but, you know, give the guys that are on the ground communicating with the population like the leverage to say no, like that's not how it went down, and kind of try to work that piece, because it can make things real dicey. So, yeah, man.
Yeah, it was interesting for sure.
Yeah, we would have times like that where people would lie to us too, like where we knew exactly what happened because it's on camera, and then they say, "Oh yeah, there's no Taliban, they're not here, they weren't here," and it's like, yeah, but like we watched them with their wheelbarrows carry the guys that we just killed here away, and you tell me you didn't see that and you don't know them, and you know it's bullshit, right? But
yeah, they're not gonna, you know, stitches get stitches, yo.
yeah, really in their world too.
Yeah,
lose their heads.
Actually, that's how they took them 2 dudes away with that Hellfire for us. Was in a wheelbarrow. You remember they?
One I think they took away. One was.
I remember.
Canal.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The other one was in the canal.
That's SOP, man. That's Taliban ambulance.
Yeah, man.
So working in the command center of 3-6 and doing these like targets, like where we would be targeting a specific individual, dude. I've watched people for hours, literally with overhead coverage. Watch them just go about their day for hours to confirm it's this guy. Okay, we got confirmation. Now we got approval to do a strike. Now we got to wait till he's out in the open. I remember watching this guy for like 2 or 3 hours. I mean, waiting for him to get out in the open, and then he walked under a tarp for like a half a second, like under a tarp, and it was like he walked under but straight through. But because he was out of sight for like a half a second, we had to go through the entire process of verifying it's the same guy, and it was just like that's just how it was, man. It was like hunting. It was like a weird cat and mouse game. You know, like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. I talked to Lieutenant Colonel Wayne Phelps about the psychology of killing with drones, and it's a lot of what you're talking about. Like these drone pilots, they can be in the United States, and they go in for shift work, right? Which is another, you know, kind of thing that they're finding.
Out in Ellis.
Yeah. And so these guys will come in, and you might be in the cockpit of this, flying this bird for, you know, 8 hours or 10 hours, whatever their shifts are. And you might the entire week might be watching one person on pattern of life, keeping eyes on him, keeping track on him, waiting for him to get far enough away from his family, you know, to execute. And then he talked about the psychology of the pilots and of the, you know, of the sensor operators and trigger guys. Like, he said it would get to a point where they might be watching somebody for like 6-8 weeks, and then the night shift come on and got the kill, and the day shift go through serious depression because they did not get to kill this person that they've been watching this whole time. Or reverse effects, but like, well, after they did it, they killed him, boom, and there's that elation of, you know, doing your job, and that elation of you're doing a service and helping, and then you have that, you know, that other sensations and emotions of actually killing a human being. But they're watching it in 4K. They're seeing it more vividly than what I see it when I'm doing it on the ground. And then not only that, they're circling above, like you said, and keeping PID on the whole situation. And, you know, at times watching these kids come out and pick up pieces of their parents and wheel them away. And he said, you know, the psychology that for somebody who's never done it is totally different than the psychology of people who have been on the ground and done it. So he had a great book called on killing the psychology of
killing remotely.
On killing remotely, the psychology of killing with drones. And it's very, very interesting to me because, like, one of the statistics.
That's the world we're in now, man.
Oh, dude, it is the world. Until we get drone defeat, that's the world. And what I would say is, like, I think they would do better by recruiting these sensor operators and these pilots for these drones out of the ground forces, because they see little to no detrimental PTSD symptoms and effects from people that have been on the ground and then go pilot these things versus guys that come out of school or out of college and go straight to piloting these things. And so little interesting tidbit that I got out of him right there, which is something that I didn't expect.
Well, it would definitely be a weird vibe to like go into work in the United States, go into your little air-conditioned trailer and sit down at your command post and start, flying your drone around, smoking dudes or whatever.
Yeah.
And then off work, let's go grab Taco Bell on the way home.
And that's where he said that's where he said the issues were, is like you get off this shift and now you got to go home and be dad and be husband, and even though you're on this side of the world and people are like, oh, they're on this side of the world, let's say just that in an air conditioned hut, and it's like, yes, exactly, that's that's one of the problems.
Yeah,
I think
it's a weird. It definitely takes away the it deadens the effect of it. I never felt bad about any of the dudes we smoked, but it was like,
I don't think they do either.
IED and placer instructor guy. The second dude was on a different strike. He had put in an IED that blew up and took out one of the platoon commanders, injured him enough where he had to go back to the States. We blew that dude up before we left country. It was the last kill, actually. He was the last guy, and we got confirmation through biometrics that he had built the IED that had hit our platoon commander earlier in the deployment.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I was like, dude, fuck that dude.
No, I don't think it's these guys being weak. I don't think it's that. I think it's a mixture of
either.
I think it's a mixture of never doing it and never being that close. Like, that's the closest that they've ever been to the enemy. So if that's the closest you've ever been, then that your mind is going to go there. Like, your cognitive distance to war is not the same as your physical distance to war, but they're seeing this shit HD right in front of them, just like they're there, and that's going to play a piece, right?
Yeah, and it's not a video game. It's for real. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting too, like in your situation, just like you just said right there, is like you're seeing, hearing, and feeling the effects of these IEDs and watching it happen to these people. You're seeing it happen to the friendly forces, that they're getting mangled by these guys and they're getting fucked up. And so, yeah, of course, you're going to be like, yeah, fuck that guy. He's killed this many of my Marines. He's killed, injured this many of the Marines in the AO. We're fucking him up. And I wouldn't lose sleep over that either. I just think that when those guys come in and they've never been on that side, I think it can do, a little bit different things. So
maybe they should have them sit in the heat in the desert in 29 Palms.
No, maybe not that, because of obviously the technology and the systems. But no, what I was going to say is, like, instead of you doing shift work, you do deployments. You go on a 4-month deployment where you're deployed to the can and you do your work there. So
there's actually a team that's forward deployed that takes off and lands the drone.
Yeah.
So wherever the drones take off from, whatever country allows us, be it Kuwait or Turkey or whatever, I don't know. So I'm just throwing out stuff. There is a team there that takes off and lands the drone, and once it's taken off, then it connects back to Nellis in Vegas, and then they take over for the actual mission. And they're contractors that get paid literally to take off and land drones.
Yep, that's right.
Rearm them and stuff.
You know what's wild is, until I read that book, until I talked to Wayne and had him on the show, I did not realize, I don't think, the number of drones that are in the Middle East in the sky, like at all times. Like, and we have these drones now that can just stay up there, air refuel, continue to go, continue to.
You can see a lot of the stuff that's flying around on like Flight Tracker.
Okay.
There's like websites. Like I was on Twitter yesterday, and they're like, "Oh, the U.S. nuclear sniffer aircraft is active again. It's flying this path." And they're tracking it. They see it because it has a transponder.
Yeah, that's wild.
I'm sure there's aircraft that don't have transponders, but
for sure.
All those, you see them. Like, you can see re-airing aircraft or refueling aircraft, stuff like that. Situation dictates, obviously, but right now, if you were to look over like the Black Sea and stuff, you would probably see the marker for a drone.
For sure. Around. For sure. At least the ones that they don't.
It's crazy what's open source that people don't realize. It's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild.
But yeah, man, 3-6. It was a decent deployment. Came back from that, and I don't know how long we're going for. I'm good till whenever. But
keep going, man. Keep pushing.
Came back from that deployment, and they were like, "Hey, you want to go be a JTAC?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah!" And that was kind of the deal. Like, if you're a sergeant 0861 at the time, if you were a lap mover, you had to do a deployment as a 0861. Then when you came back, they would screen you to be a JTAC. So came back, got sent to TCP school, went through that tactical air control party school at Little Creek, or not Little Creek, Little Creek.
Virginia, right?
Been there?
Yeah, right outside Virginia Beach by Dam Neck.
Yep.
And did that, came back from that, was going through a MARSOC fires course, and I thought I was deploying with MARSOC because they're like, hey, you got a deployment coming up. I'm like, and they're like, hey, next week you get over to MARSOC to go through this fires course. And I was like, all right, cool. And one of my buddies was a JTAC over there, and he's like, dude, if you're over here doing a class, you're probably deploying with us. And I was like, fuck yeah. Like, hell yeah, man. And I'm going through these classes, and my major at 10th Marines calls me. He's like, hey, you need to go down to MEF and pick up your orders for your deployment. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, MEF? MARSOC doesn't fall under MEF. Fuck. So I go down to MEF, and they're like, MARSOC? You know, kind of like, who the fuck do you think you are? Kind of like,
slow down there, Hammer.
Yeah, cool guy. No, you're going on this advisor team. And I was like, oh, bummer, but that's still pretty cool.
Yeah.
So did the advisor team workup, and the workup was kind of like going through MCT again because they're pulling guys for these advisor teams from all over the Marine Corps because they need different specialties.
Sure.
So it's like, this is how you use NVGs. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, are you serious? Like, this is how you do. It was like literally at first it was like basic weapon stuff. I'm like, come on, man. But then we got language classes. We did a lot of pistol shooting. There was a lot of like the green on blue threat, you know, worried about Afghans turning and like shooting their. So we did a lot of pistol training out in 29 Palms. I mean, so much. Dudes were like, dude, fuck it. They didn't want to shoot anymore. I'm like, dude, we're shooting free ammo.
Yeah.
You don't want to shoot? I'll take your ammo. I'm totally fine.
Yeah.
And then we deployed as the last advisor team to Sangin in 2013. And yeah, and that was probably my most like that was my most kinetic deployment. Shittiest living conditions. We're living in these like habs is what they called them. They're basically like HESCO bunkers with like a aluminum roof. So you're basically living in a dirt fucking bunker.
Yeah, you living good.
Again, no real running water. There was some shower sometimes. We were starving kind of deal. Like it.
You all of that deployment.
Was the worst, but it was the best deployment I had because it was like we were doing shit. We were working with the Afghans. We were going on missions. You know, like
Sangin was a naughty place there for 2, 3, 4 years, man.
Dude, it was not good the whole time. Like I think it would quiet down some in the wintertime. Like the advisor team we took over for, they're like, hey guys, it's been pretty quiet. Like there's some stuff has been happening. They did a big operation up in Kanjaki, which was, I guess, a big deal. Like they were like, yeah, as soon as we got off the helos off the back, we were taking fire. Like we were running through an open field, you know, bounding. Dudes had bullet holes in their backpacks and shit like that because there was like the Taliban dudes had set up bunkers in this like cornfield. So anyways, but when we got there, it was kind of, well, I was gonna say when we got there, it was kind of quiet, but literally the first night we were there, these guys were all celebrating because they're going home. The other advisor teams were like, hey, we're going to grill steaks. And we're like, all right, cool. You know, let's do it. And we're outside grilling and shit. And there's just tracer fire flying over the camp, dude. I'm like, what the fuck? Where am I right now? There's like tracers 15 feet above me. We're sitting here grilling, you know, like we can hear like, and there was this like river crossing area that every couple weeks, like some Taliban dudes would always try to cross it and shoot at the post and then go back, and they would always get smoked, but they just kept doing it over and over again. And that was just one of those nights. And I was just like, okay, like this is going to be
this is home.
This is home.
That's what you wanted when you wanted to go 03. That's what you wanted. Just remember that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, like I said, you get what you asked for.
Now, were you guys able to get fires on some of these guys, or was the machine gun bunker just tearing them up?
Oh well, that whole thing. So let me back up. That was from the advisor team we took over for. That was up in Kajaki. That was during an operation. When we first got there and there was tracer fire flying over, that was from these guys trying to shoot at the post and they tried to cross the river. They got taken out by Apaches that night. Okay. And then the next morning, we're like chilling out in front of the berthing hab thing, and this like, you know, Danger Ranger rolls up with bodies in the back. And they're like, oh, these are those dudes from last night. And we're like, oh, okay. There we go.
Got him.
Bird dog.
Yeah, got him. And then it was quiet. Other than that, it was kind of quiet for the first like couple weeks or so. And then like there was the official like fighting season has begun. You know, the Taliban makes an announcement.
Oh yeah.
Like this date is the official start of the fighting season. And when that day came, it was just like
time to get your jihad on.
We were gonna go do a SNAP VCP, so a SNAP vehicle checkpoint, and do biometrics, like get some fingerprints, do some retina scans, see if anybody pops, you know, in the system for being like a terrorist or some shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we were cruising up 611, which is the main route through Sangin. We're cruising up through 611, and we're rolling up, and there's this dump truck, civilian dump truck, on its side, bullet holes and shit in it, in the middle of the road. We're like, what the fuck? Like, don't stop. You know, that's obviously something's going on. Don't stop. So go around that, take some pot shots from one side, keep going, and then there's another one up in front of it. And what had happened was civilian contractors, you know, locals, were supposed to be paving 611. The whole point of Sangin and Kajaki has a dam.
Yep.
611 is the route that goes through Sangin and then up to Kajaki. They're trying to get the road paved so that they could bring the equipment up to repair the dam to bring consistent electricity to Helmand Valley. Well, the Taliban don't want that.
Right.
So they were killing the contractors. They killed the contractors and then wrecked their vehicles their vehicles were made to try to ambush us, basically. So we took some pot shots. We just kept pushing through. We saw some Afghan police. We're like, you guys need help? No? Okay. We kept going. Did our retina scans and all that stuff, and then came back. That was the first time we got shot at. And then I remember on our way back, we saw these guys shooting. These Afghan police were like engaged with someone, and we're like, hey, request permission for our vehicle to pull off and see if they need any help. And we pull off and we go up to they're up on this hill just shooting out. We're like, you know, where are you guys shooting or what? Or we're getting ready to go ask. And it's me and my corpsman in the back of this 4x Cougar. It's me and my corpsman and a linguist in the back, and then the driver, the captain, and then our gunner. And they're like, get out and go see, you know, what's going on. We're like, all right, open the back hatch up. And the interpreter is getting ready to get out. And you just hear whap, 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 and rounds just start hitting the back of the truck. We're like, get in. Like, we're pulling him in, and he's like, I'm shot. We're like, pull him back, fucking slam the door shut. And we're like, we'll start going over. I'm like, where you shot? And he's like, ah. And he's like, oh, no, they shot at me. And we're like, God. So we're thinking he's shot, dude. Like, talking about like a quick, I don't know. It went from 0 to 100. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like all of a sudden rounds are hit. Because if one of those rounds had gone through the door, had not hit the sides, because it hit the sides, if it had gone in, I mean, it's inside of a metal vehicle. It would have just started hitting everybody, like ricocheting around or something. But
yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, that was like our first, like, oh shit, things are happening, kind of deal to us, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then that continued to be kinetic throughout that deployment. Then I assume. Yeah,
I mean, it was always like it was hit and miss. It was certain days where nothing. I went out. We had three. So the way we had set it up, we had 3 teams, one for each Tulai, which was the Afghan company. Mm-hmm. I was the only JTAC though. So anytime anyone went out, I was out. So I was always going out with these dudes. So there was not always stuff happening, but when there was, it was like when we would go up to Shamshir Dew, which was north of us, man, there would always be shit going on out there. They would always shoot from a tree line to the south. The company commander there was killed. 6 Afghans were killed in a firefight. We were out there. We were trying to help.
The Marine company commander?
No. The Afghan
commander.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. We had been meeting with this guy. We'd been meeting with the first sergeant. Super nice. He'd always feed us and all this stuff. And I remember we went out there one time. So I'm trying to remember which time this was, but we went out there. I don't think the fighting started until we got out there. I think when we were out there, the fighting started. But we had a combat camera kid with us, and I remember. Okay, now that I'm kind of remembering all this, we had a combat camera kid with us, and this was like he'd been at Leatherneck the whole time. This was like his adventure. Like, you know, I'm coming down with you guys for a week, kind of see what's going on, kind of deal. And we're like, all right, cool. go out to Shamshir. Something's going on. There was a team out that had been ambushed or something like that, an Afghan team. And when we get there, we're like talking to the guys and stuff like that. And so when we get there, nothing was going on. We start getting shot at. Sorry, I'm going back and forth. I'm just trying to remember everything correctly.
It's all good.
Nothing's going on. We start getting shot at. They send a team out. A couple of those guys get killed. So they're going to get another team together. And we're at the compound, or we're at the patrol base trying to spot. They're shooting at the patrol base. We hear the rounds flying by us. I'm trying to get aircraft on station. And I remember going down to talk to the Afghans that are getting ready to go out, and they're like, "Hey, 203, you got any 203?" And I'm like, "I don't even have a 203, man." He was trying to get grenade rounds off of us for their 203s. And we're like, "No, we don't have any. We don't have." It was me and the combat camera kid, because that's what it was. I saw him talking to the Afghans by himself, and I was like, "Oh, well, he needs somebody with him, just in case." So I go down, and they're asking us, and we're like, "No, sorry, man, we can't do anything. We don't have them." And at the same time, I'm trying to work on the air. This patrol goes out to go, it's like a rescue, to go rescue these guys that are getting slaughtered out here, and immediately start taking contact. Like as soon as they step outside the wire, I'm like trying to get aircraft in. The Afghans are shooting their SPG-9. They're shooting mortars. And I remember I had air that was supposed to be checking in. And I'm telling the first sergeant, I'm like, "Hey, you got to stop shooting mortars. You got to stop shooting mortars. I got aircraft checking in, or getting ready to check in." He's like, "No, they're dying." He's like, obviously worked up. And he eventually, like, he's getting pissed. And I'm like, "Hey, you got to shut them off." So they shut the mortars off. I call back. I'm like, "Say status of the rotary wing." And they're like, "Hey, 10 more minutes. They got delayed." And I'm like, fuck, because I'm arguing with this guy to shut mortars off while his dudes are out here getting killed. So now he's pissed at me because I'm like, "Dude, just start shooting them again." I'm like, "Just keep going, So that happens. And then we had an Afghan was like, he was trying to get us to shoot 203s into a compound behind us. We were sitting there all facing this way. We're getting shot at from this way. We're all, directing our attention that way. And he's like, "Hey, they're Taliban or whatever." And we're like, "Where? Where are they at?" And he's like, "In that compound." And he's trying to get us to shoot into the compound. And we're like, "Well, we're not taking fire from there. And we don't see anyone. We're not going to shoot into that compound." And he told the interpreter, he's like, "Well, if you aren't going to help us, then we'll kill you, and then we'll kill the Americans." And so the interpreter came over and told us that. And we're like, "All right, dude, here's a pistol." Zap. He was a Afghan interpreter, but before being an interpreter, he was on their Tiger teams, which is like their like SF Afghan guys. So we're like, "Here's a pistol, dude. Keep an eye on him because we're facing over here watching this shit." End of the day, company commander's killed. I think it was like 6 guys got killed. There was no Taliban in the building behind us. After that happened, we saw some women and kids come out of there. It was just like, it was super fucked up. And when the guys came back from that patrol to like rescue these guys, the linguist, one of them came up to me and the combat camera kid, and he's like, "Hey, that dude that was asking for grenades?" We're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "He died." And we're like, "Oh." And I was like, and the combat camera guy was like super like bummed. And I'm like, "Dude, man, this is like his first day out here, or not first day or first couple days. He just came from Leatherneck." And I was like, "Dude, it happens, man." I'm like trying to console him, kind of like, "It's cool, dude. Like, it is what it is, man. That's fucking Sangin, bro. Like, it's war. It's fucking war." My captains, actually, a couple of the officers on my team wrote a really good piece that got published in multiple things called, I'll have to look it up. Let me think about it. But it was about that whole incident. And, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd love to read it.
Where I was going to with that. I mean, it's like something peace in Sangin. While we're talking, I'll look it up real quick. But it just turned out to be like it was my best deployment because I got to meet these Afghans, work with them, live with them, go on missions, do stuff. But I was also like doing my job, like being an observer. Anytime we'd go to a building, it was like, "Hey, are we going to be here for more than 5 minutes? Okay, well, I'm getting up on the roof." I was like on the roof of every building and saying and just looking at shit, But it just felt like, I don't know, it just felt like we were doing something worthwhile, It was a really good deployment. It's, like I said, worse living conditions, but like overall, enjoyment of, I guess, of a deployment, it was probably my best. By the end, we were ready to get out of there.
Yeah,
so many close calls, almost getting shot in the face a couple times. Like, it was like, okay, dude, let's get the fuck out of here. That article they wrote is called Cautious Hope in Sangin. If you look that up, Cautious Hope in Sangin.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we were the last advisor team for Sangin. We were scheduled to be the last advisor team. So we got to Ramadan, and we were like, our major was like, hey, listen up, higher up. We're the last advisor team. These guys are as good as they're going to get. We're supposed to deploy back home. We're supposed to redeploy back home 2 weeks after Ramadan ends. And we all know during Ramadan, nothing happens. So while we first started Ramadan, he's like, why don't we just redeploy us early? So they're going to send us home early because there was no reason. They're like, yeah, you're right. They're not going on missions during Ramadan. And then 2 weeks after is really no time to actually do anything.
Right.
So you guys are going to go home. And we're like, he came and told us like, hey guys, we're done. You know, we're done. Tomorrow we're going to start packing our gear up and doing accountability and shit. And we're out of here. And we're like, fuck yeah. You know, like, hell yeah.
Freedom bird
and
up.
Then we get everything started packing up. And he's like, wait, we got one more mission, you know, kind of deal. That's exactly one more mission. I'm like, man, this is the one where someone gets fucked up.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
You know, like that. Yeah. And then we went out to this patrol base, PB Cuba, and I'm up on a rooftop and looking for whatever. And then we start taking contact, and I'm up on this rooftop by myself. There's like one sandbag, and I'm laying flat, dude, behind this one sandbag with rounds literally flying right over my face. And I'm just like, oh my, and I'm talking on I had a 152 radio, and I had what we call a Soldier ISR. It's a little video feed from the aircraft pod, so I can see what the aircraft is looking at. But usually you'll see it on a tablet or on a computer or something. This is a little eyepiece, and I'm just holding it up to my eye, and I'm talking on the radio. And I got a Harrier on station, and I see the guy that's shooting and got me pinned down. But 3-4 was they own the battle space. We were just the advisor team in the battle space.
Yeah.
And their like battalion commander wouldn't approve it because the guy was standing next to a mud wall. And at the time, a mud wall is considered a compound. Mm-hmm. So we had to like declare a tick or something. And I'm like, we're not going to declare a tick for one dude. I mean, I might be pinned down right here, but
yeah,
I don't know. It was fucking sketchy because it was like, I mean, it was like right over my face. And I was like, holy shit, dude. Oh, yeah. And I remember my buddy Fosberg like poked his eyeballs over the edge of the roof, and he's like, hey man, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, like, I'll be all right.
Shit'll buff out. If I'm hit, I'll roll to you.
Dude, it was just so like, I don't know, it was fucking close. But it was like, fuck, man. When we got done with that, I'm like, Jesus, dude, one more mission like that. You know, and I almost get shot in the face. Like, that'd have been no good.
Yeah, well, at least you didn't. I'm glad you didn't, and you're here to tell the story. So
me too, man. We were lucky. None of the Americans on that deployment were injured. We lost a bunch of Afghans to, you know, being killed and injured, but you know, it is what it is. It's their country.
Their country, and they got to learn. Yeah, man.
Well, they're learning now, I think.
Yeah.
It's a tough spot.
Yeah, it's depressing. It's depressing that you could fight for that long and teach and give and empower that long, and then at the end of the day, they all drop their arms, leave their women and kids, and run for the plains.
I mean, it was just there was so much corruption, man, and it was known. You know, it was known corruption. It was like they were like basically with the military brass had like a attitude of we have to accept a certain level of corruption just because that is their way of life. Like that's just how it is. Yeah. But it became to a point where you got guys like in Sangin, you know, that just wanted to fight for their country, but they were tired of being in Sangin, dude. They were getting killed. Like there was a ton of guys getting killed, you know, and maybe there's a food shortage or maybe there's an ammo shortage. That kind of thing shouldn't happen. When the Taliban took over, some of these bases they went to, guys had single magazine of ammo. Yeah. You know, and that's because of corruption and the money not filtering down and the guys getting what they're supposed to get.
That's a fact.
Not long after we left, like a year after we left, maybe 2 years after we left, one of the guys from my advisor team sent me a YouTube video where the Taliban had taken over Sangin again. Yeah. You know, because there was no more American presence there. And the bazaar that was bustling and things were happening, we're dodging cars and shit, was completely ghost empty. Like literally, you know, like tumbleweeds blowing across, and the video just destroyed. And it's like, that's it's kind of on them. You know, at some point you got to be like, this is my country.
For sure.
Which way do I want to live? You know, I can't say I don't like this. I don't like this way, but also continue to accept it.
A fact. We showed them how they could live and what is out there if they wanted it bad enough. And maybe not. I don't know. But the men of that country, it's time to stand up.
Yeah.
So take me into what you're doing now, transition and some of the different sticks you have getting hot in the fire right now, so people know where to find you and what you're doing.
Man, I will tell anybody, you know, veteran, like when you get out, use your GI Bill. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Doesn't matter. I mean, if you don't want to go to a traditional 4-year school, that's fine. The GI Bill, you can get a technical training and stuff like that.
Sure.
I knew a guy who went through the not WyoTech, but a similar school like that is like WyoTech is like a feeder school for, I think, like the NHRA and stuff.
Okay.
And I think there's a different school that NASCAR has. It might be called NASCAR Tech. But he used his GI Bill to go through that, to learn. He was a mechanic and he wanted to like get all these certifications and, you know, but it's like, use your GI Bill, look at the options. And that's what I did. I got out in 2018. I said, I was at the MU. And, you know, if there's any officers that listen to this, I guess this is a good thing. The reason I got out was I was wanting to screen to go to MARSOC as a JTAC. You know, after that deployment, I got back from Sangin. My buddy that was at MARSOC was like, I hit him up and I was like, what do you think, man? Should I come over there? Like, do you like it? He'd been over there for a little bit. And he's like, I think you'll like it. He's like, because I had just gotten orders to Anglico. He's like, go to Anglico and do all the cool stuff there and get better, and then come over here and you're going to be an even better JTAC. And I'm like, okay, you know, you're there, so I'm going to take your advice. So I take my orders. I go to first Anglico after my Sangin deployment, go on a deployment with Anglico, come back, become an evaluator, JTAC evaluator. And at that time, I was like, all right, I want to screen to go over to MARSOC. So I hit up those guys. But at the same time, while I'm trying to contact MARSOC, the Marine Corps and its big green weenie is realizing that it needs a fires chief for a MU deployment. And I had just come off a MU deployment, and I was like, dude, I never want to do that again. Like, I thought that was going to be cool after Iraq and Afghanistan, but that fucking sucked. And they told me, they're like, hey, man, we're going to send you to the 11th MU to be the fires chief. And I'm like, well, if you do that, I'm getting out of the Marines. Like, it's a waste of my time. It's not worth me telling my kid goodbye to go do something like that. So, you know, at some point we got to step up and stand up for ourselves. And this would have been my 5th deployment since 2009. And this was in 2016, you know, so this is in a 7-year period. I'm about to start my 5th deployment.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if you do that, then I'm going to get out. And they're like, well, sucks to suck. You're going over to the 11th MU to be the fires chief. And I'm like, all right, well, after this deployment, I'm getting out. And I get over to the MU and I'm like everything else, I'm like, you know what? I'll make the most of this situation. They have a WTI seat, which is the Weapons and Tactics Instructor School, which is the next level for JTAC. So you become a JTAC, and then it's different now, but it was like JTAC Evaluator, and then WTI. Now it's like JTAC, JTAC-I, JTAC-E, and then WTI or something like that. But at the time, WTI is the highest thing you could get. And I was like, well, I know they have a seat for that schoolhouse. If I can work myself into that seat, then I will be able to stay at JTAC my whole career. And that's all I wanted. Mm-hmm. And I was like, so that'll make the MU worth it. So I get over to the MU first day, and they're like, hey, welcome to the MU, man. I went and I checked in on a Friday at like 7 o'clock because like there's no way no one's going to be there.
Right.
Get there on a Friday, 7 o'clock. Just got back from Louisiana also from a field op with First Anglico. Like checked out, came back from the field, checked out. The next day, checked into the MU. Got to the MU on a Friday at 7 o'clock. The whole staff is there. And I'm like, what the fuck? And my major's like, yeah, dude, welcome to the MU. Sunday. He's like, get ready. We're going on ship on Sunday for 2 weeks. And I'm like, what the fuck? You know, like, this is crazy. And I was like, all right, I'm going to make the best of this. I meet my air officer. And I was like, hey, sir, do you guys have a seat for WTI? And he's like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, well, you do. You know, I know because I've been tracking it. And I was like, yeah, you do. And he's like, why? Would you want to go? And I'm like, yeah, I would like to go. I'm a JTAC evaluator. And he kind of gave my credentials, been on deployment already. I want to do this. And he was like, well, that's an officer school. And I'm like, no, it's not. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, I know multiple enlisted guys that go. Like, that's literally not an officer school. And then I found out they didn't send anyone. They didn't send me, and they didn't send anybody. And when I found out that I didn't get that seat, and when he said that to me, that no, that's an officer school, I go, in my mind, I was like, that was it.
Power button off.
Like every other time I said, no, this is it, I'm getting out, fuck this. And then, but I left like a trigger, like, well, if I get WTI, then maybe it's not a bad deal. Well, maybe if I get this, then maybe it's not a bad deal. Well, when he said that, that was it for me. Because I was like, this is going to be my 5th deployment. I'm tired of being talked down upon because I'm an enlisted guy. Like, fuck off. I don't need this anymore. And that was it. And so I did as much schooling as I could before I got out. Took classes. I mean, every time I went on deployment, I planned to take classes, and then I never did it because I was like, well, I won't have time. I had time every time, even in Sangin with all the shit going on. I could have taken a college class there. So do that.
Yeah.
But then I got out, had basically a year's worth of school, maybe just over a year's worth of school done. So I started at community college here in San Diego and got the credits I needed to transfer, went to San Diego State, got a degree in journalism and advertising.
Okay.
And now I do digital marketing. At the time, while I was in school, my first summer break, I decided to take my Jeep Wrangler on like a cross-country road trip and pseudo cross-country back to Indiana. And I took like 14, 15 days or something like that. And I just stopped at people's houses and recorded the podcast episodes. And that's where the first, I think, 6 episodes of the podcast came from me on my road trip, starting up in San Francisco with my buddy Cam, Doc Emil, who went to Sangin 3 times. And that was it. And then I came back and edited it, and that became the podcast. I started my website, where jcramergraphics.com, where I sell custom gear, do custom logos, do unit orders, stuff like that. I've been working a lot with, different people, TBS. I've been working with Air Force guys too, which is cool.
Awesome.
So I do digital marketing, e-commerce, SEO. I worked at an advertising agency for a little bit to get some real world experience, but now I just kind of work on my own, and I do the podcast and the website full time.
Yeah, man, I love your show. I love your show. I love your news that you're pushing out too. What's that? Former Action Guy News?
Just Former Action News.
Former Action.
Yeah,
News.
on Instagram it's Former Action News and Former Action Guys are my 2 ones. The Former Action News channel used to be J Cramer Graphics. So before I started a podcast Instagram, it was my J Cramer Graphics page. And I was like, I'm not sharing any of my graphic design stuff. I'm just sharing funny videos or memes or news. I was starting to share a lot of news. I was like, I think I'm just going to switch this into a full-time news page, and then start another page for the podcast and just go from there.
Yeah.
And that's why that one has way more followers than the podcast one, is because it was originally my J Cramer Graphics, and I would share the graphic design and photos people would send of their gear. And but yeah, man, it's been a cool adventure. I've gotten to meet a lot of cool people. I'm humbled. Like, I still feel like I've never done really a lot. There's so many guys that have done so much more than me. But I also tell people that say that same thing, like, you can't judge your service against anyone else's.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you deployed to Afghanistan. Doesn't matter if you deployed to Iraq. As long as you did what you were supposed to do, and you weren't a complete ass pain, then you did what you were supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I've met some Delta guys and stuff through the podcast that are just super humble, and, they understand, like, we all play a part. Like, there's no big dick fucking challenge or anything like that, because, like, when you meet guys like that and they just, like, I don't know, it's just interesting, because more so than a lot of people, they fully understand how the support elements work and, like, why they're necessary. And, they're the most supported of the guys, these special mission unit guys. So
yeah,
it's just been interesting hearing what they've done.
I think a lot of it, in my opinion, is the psychology of it. When you've been to the arena and then you've come out of the arena and you've done that, you've proven to yourself, and everybody else that, was there, but you've proven to yourself something that you don't have to boast anymore. There's nothing to be, rah, yes, we did that. Yes, that's the work. It's because it strikes you in a different way once you've killed them, once you've been over there, once you've lost your friends. And it's not like you want to shy away from it, but it's a humble thing. Like, yeah, And I understand that without X, Y, and Z, I didn't have anything. I understand in Marja without without the Air Force or the Navy aircraft bringing in X, Y, and Z, we didn't eat. We didn't have clean water. We didn't make it. And once you're confronted with like that in real life, which these Delta guys, that's what they do. They're direct action raids and such. Yeah, dude, it hits at an entirely different level.
Yeah, it's cool. It's like I said, I'm blessed to have met the people I've met, for them to share their stories out of their own goodwill. It's just been an awesome ride, and I'm looking forward to, I'm almost at episode 200, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been, I started my first episode and when I first published it, it was episode 001. And I was like, that's like a challenge to myself to
Triple
make
digits.
it to episode 100.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I was like, I will make it to, cause it was one of those things like, everyone says me and my buddies would be great to interview. It would be great for a podcast. But I really believe that, and then I was also like, how serious am I going to be with this? Do I want this to be something, or do I want it to just be like a little quick project or part-time project? Mm-hmm. But if I want to build it into something, then I need to just from the get-go be serious about it. And that's why I was like 001, right off the bat, that's my challenge, to get to 100, to keep it going. And yeah, man, it's just been a really cool time.
Yeah, man.
I don't know how many times I can say I'm just lucky to have met people like you, and just again, tons of other people that have just done funny things, crazy things. I've had female bobsledder on the podcast. I've had a Delta operator that was in Black Hawk Down.
Yep.
And everything in between. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, listen,
cool,
man, we've been getting after it. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the transparency in your story, and obviously what you're doing now in the podcast community. Getting the stories shared out there. But I think we definitely need to reconvene after another period of time. It was too long this time, and just kind of clash ideas off each other. So I appreciate you coming out, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I look forward to doing it again in the future.
All right, sounds good. All right, guys, for Choices Not Chances, we appreciate you being with us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Well, that concludes this episode. Thanks for listening to Choices Not Chances podcast. Please share, like, and subscribe wherever you listen or watch our podcast. You can also follow us on social media at Choices Not Chances podcast. Thanks, and have a great day.
Louisiana Gun Shop, your firearm headquarters. Specializing in concealed carry guns, ammo, and training. You can get your Louisiana permit with us. Also a large selection of AR-15s, or if you are that build-it-yourself type of guy or gal, we have all the parts to build and customize your own AR-15. Glock, SIG, Taurus, Ruger, we have all the brands, both in the store or at LouisianaGunShop.com.
Not too far. You're marking the building. Hit him. Yeah, that's good. That's a good shot. That's money. Yeah.